Welcome to episode 2.
We've made it. We've made it to episode 2. We have. And I think we should start real quick with a location update.
Very much so.
I'm inside USA Hockey Arena right now here in Flint, Michigan, and I am actively watching the under-18 team practice for the upcoming IHF World Championships, under-18 World Championships, which were in Frisco, Texas last year, and Frisco and Allen, Texas last year, and then this year they are in Bratislav Bratislav, Slovakia, which this team will fly to on Monday. So I am watching practice at some point during the show, Robert. I may have to swing down there and talk to a player, but luckily we have a wonderful guest coming at 2:45 that is going to make things smooth. So we have made it to episode 2, and as you've already texted me, audio is a little quiet, so we're going to try to turn it up a little bit on here. And those are the early producer notes, as we're going to start every show with producer notes, and let's figure it out.
Very much. I think the producer note for today is don't let hockey get in the way of this podcast in the future, frankly. How dare you? Number 2 producer note would probably be this ambience is actually the best thing I've ever heard, and I'm a very big fan of it.
It is. I'm trying to edit the mic volume right now as we do this, so it is obviously this is the ambience we want in the show. So we're thrilled to be here. So
they say, hey, Glenn Goldson said the other day, 50% of hockey is random. So I think this is that 50%.
I think so. And a wonderful. Actually, really excited about the today we have. I think he's actually already in studio, so I'm really excited to bring our guest on today. Jack Hahn is going to join us today. Jack is a must-read, must-follow, whatever word you use now for people in our space, and really excited to have Jack on. He's got a new book out as well that is a must-buy every year, and we're going to talk about some really fun topics. So excited to bring Jack on, and while Robert handles that, I'm going to double-check my microphone volume again.
Sounds good.
Hey,
all right, Jack. How are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Super. So who are we? Who's Sean watching at the rink? Is it his kids or?
No, So Jack, I'm flying to Vegas tonight for Frozen 4, and then today I'm at USA Hockey Arena watching the under-18 team practice at the getting ready for. They've got on Monday they're flying out to Slovakia for a World, so watching them practice and enjoying watching those drills right now. So that's where I am right now, and that's where we're getting the rink ambiance from.
Okay, nice. We're getting like a nice background. Soundtrack. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So.
An ambience that I think, Jack, you're probably pretty familiar with from your professional life. Definitely hearing those sounds in the background, probably all the time, I would imagine.
Like maybe not as much in recent years. I've been doing more writing and a little bit less on ice instruction. Like obviously, like the noise, but especially like the smell of a rink really brings me back, and it's something that I'll never forget.
Do you have on that? Do you have a particular like rink food or rink drink or something like rink coffee or rink fries, rink chicken strips? Like, what's your go-to when you're at a hockey rink? What do you take the temperature of that rink with in terms of consumables?
Like I'm a big food guy, and for me, it's just I want to seek out whatever the place is good at making. Like I don't have a go-to.
Okay.
Like I'm not really a coffee drinker. Like I enjoy it, so it's more of a, like I'm not a big fan of rink coffee personally because like unless I need to pick me up. But so this rink that I played at growing up, they had really good tuna salad sandwiches randomly. It was like, it was not my home rink, but it was a rink that we played at like a couple times a year, and they had this snack bar, and it was like $1.50 for like 2 slices of white bread, like some mayo and some tuna. So I would always grab one or two whenever I'm there. I started bringing my 3-year-old son to the rink just to watch kind of older kids play hockey, and sometimes we'll share a grilled cheese sandwich. He really likes those. Fries can be hit or miss. Like I know some rinks with amazing kind of homemade fries, but if it's just the frozen kind, then I'll take a pass.
I've heard some people say the frozen kind maybe. Juan, you have an opinion here?
We'll see. I agree with you on the rink coffee because I think there is no such thing as good rink coffee, and I absolutely hate how the rink coffee for me has turned me into more of a coffee. Jack, you were smart. I started drinking rink coffee as a social crutch to talk to people. I'd be in the press box and I'd be like, how do I go, or how do I start a conversation with somebody who I don't know? And my tool was to go get coffee near them, and it would be like, oh, you're getting coffee, and that was my skeleton key to create a lot of relationships and talk to people. Unfortunately, it got me. Now I drink way too much coffee, and it does absolutely nothing for me. But the coffee itself was an avenue for more. It definitely led to some interesting conversations and some people I've gotten to know in this business. And so both negative and positively, because the body now does not do well without it. So.
Just pouring acid and caffeine into it nonstop apparently has repercussions. Yeah. Who would have thought? All right. Well, Jack, we really glad we have you on today. There's a lot of directions we could go. You just published a book that I'm a big fan of. The last couple of years, actually, I've been a big fan of. We can get into that. But there's something that Sean mentioned that you wrote recently, and I took a look at it as well, about something that the highest skilled players do that they never really are going to tell you. I'd love to hear you kind of talk a little bit about what that is and what that means, because I found it really fascinating, but I suspect you'll do a better job of kind of describing it than I will.
So just to give you kind of the full context, for the past 6 years after leaving the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, I've been, first of all, doing a lot of writing online, sharing some of my experiences, some of my knowledge, but also working with minor hockey players. And, you know, a handful of those players have gone from minor hockey to major junior to now being NHL draft picks and potentially, you know, looking at, you know, pretty decent careers at the pro levels. And it was a really fun thing for me to do, and it was always part of my ambition to kind of take players from, like, not the starting point, because obviously I'm not there when they took their first strides, but to take from, you know, minor hockey to the pros. And there were lots of things that I learned when sort of helping these players from ages, you know, 13 to 18, that kind of reinforced some of the things that I saw when I was at the NHL and AHL levels. And a lot of those things are sort of completely not talked about. And so I was watching the Montreal Canadiens against the Florida Panthers. Montreal was down 3-2. They pulled a goalie with about, you know, 3 minutes left. With about a minute left, Lane Hudson makes his solo entry. He's sort of on a semi breakaway, but like there's really no angle, right? And Daniil Tarasov, who's a goalie for Florida, comes out, challenges, and, you know, if you think about it for like 2 seconds, you're like, okay, Lane Hudson, he's not going to shoot the puck. He's not especially good at shooting the puck. There's no need for you to be over aggressive. And yet, for whatever reason, it's almost like, you know, telekinesis. But Tarasov leaves his crease. He gets dragged by Hudson all the way down to the goal line. Hudson goes back behind the net, and he just slips the puck out front, and Nick Suzuki has a completely open net to just tap the puck into. And it was just one of those moments. It's like, why did the goalie do that? Like, how can you be this dumb, right? And I think when you watch,
I'm sure that's how you always started your video sessions with players too, right?
No, but this is like, growing up, the coaches, you know, maybe not all of them, but several of the coaches that, like, they had this mindset of like, how could you be this dumb? How could this ever happen, right? And the more I learn about hockey, the more it's like, well, there's a reason this happened, right? Like, people don't forget how to play hockey, you know,
especially this level,
or exactly. So it's like, so what would cause a goalie to just go down to the corner, right? You should never do that, and normally you would never do that, but it's something that Hudson does. Like, you know, if you're a basketball fan, you can call that gravity, right? And this is sort of the magic of being, you know, a great player. It's, you know, sometimes you'll skate around people, sometimes you shoot the puck through a goalie, but a lot of times you're actually allowing your opponents to move themselves out of the way. And there's something magical about that. And the thing is, you know, the game finishes in a shootout. The Habs win, and then Mark Denis, who works for RDS, the TV broadcaster, has Lane Hudson at center ice for an interview. And Mark was trying to ask Lane about like what his thought process was, and Hudson just basically he just said the most like banal things, like, oh well, Nick was right there, and I just got him the puck, and but there was no insight, and I don't know whether it was on purpose or whether it's because like it's so innate and so automatic for him that he can't verbalize it, because with a lot of these high performers, like it is true that it's so internalized with them that they don't realize how special that is.
Mhm.
So this is where someone like me comes in, and I'm like, I can't really do this, but I know enough about this to explain to you why this is so remarkable. So I just wrote an article about it. And again, a lot of the players I work with, we talk about this. Like we talk about like, what is it that you can add as a skill, but also it's like, what is it that you can do to put your opponents in a position where they, they beat themselves. And the very best players in the world, they can do both, right? They can beat you and they can allow you to beat yourself. Some of these players that maybe are super skilled but underachieve for whatever reason, maybe they lack the second part. And then other players who maybe they're undersized, maybe they're on the slower side, they're sort of geniuses, but they top off at the AHL level or at the SHL level or whatever, because they just don't have the physicality. So obviously the best players have both, but one or the other, they're both really important qualities.
Actually, let me say something quick, Sean, and I want your opinion on it, because I had a conversation this morning with Casey DeSmith, goalie for the Dallas Stars, about a goal Wyatt Johnston scored last night, where he is in front of the net down low, 4-on-3 power play. He receives the puck and he's the right chance shot on the goalie's right, and he makes a move as though he's going to try to tuck it around forehand on the far side, or try to go maybe high glove on that side. And instead, he pulls it back and goes backhand shelf near post. And he did it in Boston a couple of weeks ago, and he did it again last night. And it's a move that, in talking with DeSmith, it was really interesting, because as a goalie, he was saying, and Sean, I'd be curious what you think about this. He was saying, you have to be patient. You don't want to overplay the far side, tuck or high glove, but you also have to respect the fact that his hands are so quick that he only needs to pull you off the post that much. And he's doing that exact thing you're talking about, where a fan might look and say, why'd the goalie leave his post? Why'd he do that? Well, it's because you're assessing all this information so quickly, and you have to make decisions. And Sean, as a goalie, I'm sure you guys always get blamed for that, no matter how good your thought process is.
Well, it's funny. Jack brought this up and talking about, hey, a goalie, why is a goalie doing that? He must be dumb. I mean, that's something that goalies get told the second they hop into the net anyway. So it's definitely a commonality. But I know we weren't bringing Jack on to talk about the nature of NHL save percentage, which is obviously a very in vogue topic right now and everything like that. But this ties in really well to that, where I'm watching these U18 kids right now playing, and I've been probably watching this team up close for 3 or 4 years here. And it's amazing to see the little elements that Jack talked about that are more present across the depth of the roster, which has been really interesting thing to see, where it probably, I remember you watch these teams, and even if this is not a quote unquote great U18 team compared to some of those other generational ones, you look at the depth of it, and you look at how players are able to manipulate the space, and it's cool to watch. And Jack, to go to you on this, I'm curious, is this something where, how much of this is something that, like, when you work with young players, is there a spot where you have to kind of start learning it? Because like in the time, like, is it something where, like, I think about this randomly, like my kids, right? Like, not from a hockey perspective, but anything, right? Like, it's why kids pick up a language when why a kid who learns a language when they're younger. Like, when you look at kind of this, is there part of a spot when you've worked with the younger kids and seen the pro level of this, is there a spot where there's kind of an age where you kind of have to start learning this for it to be able to even be in your tool bag when you get to kind of that top tier level?
So what I think is, for the majority of kids, maybe even for all kids, like that playfulness is innate. Like, the more I study how kids play, right? Because my son's 3 years old, and it's been really fun, because it's really my first year playing with him, and that playfulness is innate, because it's a way to connect. It's, play is a language, body language is language, right? So if you're looking to connect with your fellow human beings, one of the best ways to do it is via play, right? Like, if I drop off my son at daycare and there's a kid there who doesn't speak his language, I'm not worried at the least, because they'll find a way they'll play together with trucks or with the ball or whatever, right? Because body language is language. And I think what happens is, like, us adults, if we start teaching hockey in a way that becomes too explicit, I think actually it tends to overshadow this natural playfulness. So a couple of parenting anecdotes. When my son first learned how to crawl, he might have been around 6 months old, and obviously he was attracted to anything that he wasn't allowed to put in his mouth. And I had these like jawbreakers, like in like individually packaged jawbreakers. They were like colorful in these little like transparent plastic bags. I would put a jawbreaker like 2 feet in front of him. He would crawl over. At the very last moment, I would like snatch it away, or I would move it. So I would play keep away with him. And now, like, he's 3 years old. We've graduated to doing that with the soccer ball. So I have like a small like futsal ball, and in the living room, like, I would work on my soccer skills. I'm not a great soccer player, but against a 3-year-old, I do pretty well.
Yeah.
And he would like be yelling and screaming and get frustrated, and like I would give the ball back to him, but like he would want me to do it again. So I'm kind of grooming him to be a pretty good forechecker at this point. But a lot of this stuff, like, I didn't have to tell him to do anything, right? It's like I tell him, oh, like, this ball, it's my ball now. He's like, no, it's my ball. And he want to come and get it. So a lot of these, like, the playfulness of a child, I think, is innate, and you just have to channel it somehow.
It's something where, and I think I got the sound even better now based off my wife just texting me from home saying, you need to go click this button. And she's by far the
remote sound engineer.
Yes, the remote sound engineer. Credit to my wife, Christina, on that. But it's Jack, I know that I've seen some stuff you've talked about with your son and looking at it through this lens. And I've gone, and one of the things that's been, for me, I've helped out. I have a 5-year-old, and he started to play, and we've gone to practice, and we've been doing like they do the circuit stations and everything like that. And one of the things I've noticed, and I'm not a coaching expert in any shape or manner, but I've noticed the kids, it's been the most fun for me coaching it, and the most fun for obviously the kids themselves, when the station is, hey, we're gonna set up these tires, and you know what? It's tag, but you got to follow this kid's path. And then the kids love, like, when it comes to keeping that within coaching, as someone who has worked with younger players, worked with teams, what's the balance as kids go up, in your view, as you've kind of studied this now yourself, of how we keep the play before putting too much structure into it?
So one of the things that's been the most effective in my coaching with young players is working with constraints, right? Like, because in the USA Hockey sort of curriculum, there's a lot of emphasis on small area games, and that's great. But I think at the same time, you don't want to leave the kids sort of to their own accord. As a coach, your main jobs are, 1, to ensure safety, obviously; 2, to set some constraints or some structure; and then 3, to offer feedback as they go along. So it's not like, again, you set up the station or the small game and then you just walk away. No, like, you got to watch, you got to pay attention, you got to help as needed, you got to give encouragement or give feedback or give information as they go along. So so a lot of the things that are really effective with my group is, if I wanted them to work on, let's say, skill A, I would actually have him play with constraint B. So something completely unrelated, right? So today, maybe the theme is like puck protection, right? So how can a coach or any adult really foster the application of puck protection techniques without being overly explicit, saying you got to put your elbow here, you got to put your hip there, while also kind of keeping it playful? Well, one of the most effective things I found is, like, if you want kids to work on their puck protection, you have them play a small area game, and they can only shoot or pass with their backhand, which sounds completely unrelated, right? Like what does a backhand have to do with puck protection?
This isn't a game situation. Yeah.
And because what actually happens is, obviously, everybody's backhand is weaker than their forehand, so then they can't be shooting from far from a net, right? Or they can't pass it necessarily through people, or maybe they can't even sauce it over somebody's stick. So what they got to do is they got to first protect the puck, and then 2, getting closer. So it's like you're manipulating constraints to kind of create a certain effect. And I think if you get really good at doing that, you can lead players down a path where the skills that you want them to acquire, they acquire it sort of organically. So you don't have to do a ton of teaching. And then obviously, if you see sticking points or sort of blockages, you can go and address that. But you don't have to, be overly detailed in how they move. But at the end of the day, like, they're still able to figure it out for themselves.
Problem solving is the way that I talk about this sometimes with people, because that's at least the way that makes sense to me. That if you're a shooter, the problem is, how do you either get the goalie not to be where the goalie wants to be, or how do you convince them that they should be somewhere different than where you want them to be? If you're trying to pass, if you're trying to win a battle in the corner, if you're trying to feed a puck out in front, whatever you're doing, it's about problem solving in that moment. And it makes sense as you talk about it that the more constraints you have, or especially when they're particular constraints at different times, allows them to have to problem solve in that more organic way, because it's not just focused on, well, this is my strongest tool, so I'm naturally going to try to find the quickest path to use that tool. But instead, okay, we're going to have to break this down even further and kind of synthesize skills from the ground up without this tool. And then that can maybe help those skills all get elevated as a result.
Yeah. So for me, like when you're coaching sort of kids and more of a game-based approach, people work with AI, like, some of them sort of call themselves prompt engineers, right? Well, as a coach, you're a constraint engineer, right? You either you create constraints or take them away. If you want to coach youth basketball and you want to teach your players how to dunk, well, what do? Well, you set the basket just a little bit higher than what they can reach, and then try to have them dunk. And then once they can do it, move it an inch taller. And then you do that enough times over a 6-month period, like you can dunk in a regulation rim, right? If all goes well.
Yeah.
It's to this point, it's one of those things that I remember talking to some people with USA Hockey goaltending about, where they were looking at one of the problems is, and it's, I look at everything from a little bit from that goaltending perspective to the position I played, but there was a lot of there was one of the things they pushed back within USA Hockey has been, how do we create a position of problem solvers? There's been too much of, the goalie coaches said, hey, when the puck goes to the corner, you go to the RVH. Obviously a bad three-letter word right now for many people who watch the sport. And when you do this, and there's been a lot of push, I know, for USA Hockey with their goaltending department. And you look at the goalies that actually make it and everything like that, it's a lot of the guys who were put into more of that position of, hey, we're going to do this drill. And your goal is obviously to stop the puck, but it's not, you must do X, Y, and Z. It's all we really matter is, did you stop the puck? And I think that connects really well here to the larger thing. And I remember talking to Jake Ottinger about this about a year ago or so. And Jake was saying one of the things about him was his year in high school hockey in Minnesota. He had a goalie coach, but he didn't really have an in-depth goalie coach, and the ability to just basically be at practice and them say, Jake, we're just going to throw a ton of pucks at you, figure it out. That was one of the biggest development points for him, was just being allowed to play it and be a problem solver.
So I'm not a goalie guy, in the least, but when I'm at the rink, sometimes I see young goalies working with, private coaches or these facilities where goalies can work sort of on artificial ice. Like, I look at the way that we develop goalies in Canada, and honestly, like, for me, it doesn't look very fun. It just doesn't, right? Like, you're one-on-one with an adult. He's shooting on you and he's a good shooter, but you're not really in a game. You're not with your buddies. You're not really seeing a ton of variety, because it's very sort of, very like over structured. And maybe like a tip that I would give minor hockey parents whose kids are goalies is, what I would do is maybe cut the amount of private instruction or group instruction that you pay for in half. Take that time and have your kid become a rent goalie if they're old enough, right? If they're post puberty, let's say if they're 13, 14 years old, and there's going to be plenty of beer leaguers who are happy to call a goalie last minute and have your kid play and maybe, make some money. And, you get to see different players, right? Different skill abilities. Like, some of these older guys, like, they shoot the puck really well. They have really heavy shots, but they don't move so well. But maybe they compensate for it. So you get more games in at the same time too. So maybe that's kind of what we need. Because when I look back to, when, the Patrick Laws and the Roberto Luongos and Marty Brodeurs, like, that's kind of more in my era. And when I was growing up, we just played more. There was less private instruction because
Mhm.
those opportunities weren't available, and we just played more.
I think it's funny talking about like OHL exceptional status right now with this big debate, or not debate, but discussion, right? With another kid who recently applied that Sean can talk about in much more detail when he hops back on. He's talking to a hockey player right now of all the nerve. But that mentality of not just get them more games, which is obviously important, and ice availability is its whole own discussion, especially down here in the States at times, but get them games against different opponents. We talk about, with especially, it always seems like it's forwards or, number one defenseman. Okay, play up, right? Play against better players, and that'll help grow your skills. But that doesn't just have to look like play at the highest level of competition, playing in different environments too. It sounds like you're saying that could be really, really helpful, especially for goalies who, they're going to see a lot of kind of monolithic shots in a lot of the leagues they play in.
So there's sort of this core tenet of constraint-based learning, or ecological dynamics, which is sort of a lot of what coaches gravitate toward now. It's more of a game-based approach, and one of the sort of the buzzwords that they use is repetition without repetition. So what does that mean, right? Well, it means that you can, let's say if we talk about a goalie doing the reverse VH, you can do the reverse VH the same way 10,000 times, and Bruce Lee would argue that that gets you somewhere.
Yes.
But what we see in sports now is actually, if you can do more or less the same skill, but in 10,000 different ways, that also creates a certain richness of skill. And the idea that I think is really underrated is, technique is not sort of a thing that exists in isolation. It's an adaptation that you have relative to an environment, right? So there's a causal link between you and the things around you. So that link is never quite the same. So it's about sort of mapping out the territory in your mind so that you can find a solution when the moment comes.
Do you think that takes some humility that isn't always found in coaching circles? Not like an outright critique of coaches, but just to get to the levels where you are trusted to coach, and especially as the levels get higher, you've had to work hard, you've had to demonstrate skills, that it's hard to have a certain amount of humility because players can find different ways to adapt and build those techniques that might not necessarily be the way that you've seen it happen before, and that you have to have a little bit more of an expansive mindset as a coach to allow that to happen?
I think what happens sometimes is, like, depending on what level you coach, sometimes like every year you get 23 or 25 new athletes, and then you see them for a year and then they move on, and then maybe you don't see them again. So every year you're getting new people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're somebody who works with an athlete from, again, ages 23 to 18 when they get drafted, to 25 when they sort of mature, hit their prime, and then 35 when they're managing sort of their bodies on the other side of their aging curve, I think that forces a humility, because again, like, you can't get a 13-year-old to lift 300 pounds, and because he'll hurt himself, and you can't necessarily ask a 45-year-old to lift 300 pounds, because like that's not going to work either. So I have a lot of respect for the practitioners that really kind of have a long-term relationship with their clients or their athletes, because your body changes, your skill set changes, and the best people, they adapt to you, right?
Do you think that there's an element of, I don't know if you want to call it openness or not, but people talk about shelf life with coaches, and there's a lot of reasons that coaches have shorter shelf lives than they ever have before, especially in the NHL. But do you think that flexibility, I mean, I would argue that it's probably a skill set, being not just the ability to kind of keep things light at times when they need to be, because it keeps the temperature a little lower, and also just being known as someone who isn't locked into their own style. Again, there's, Pete DeBoer is someone that is certainly in the news lately as someone who, what he's going to do, what he's going to bring. Your floor is going to be elevated really, really high, but there's a shelf life there. Whereas other coaches, maybe you could put John Cooper in this category if you want. There's a lot of other things to talk about, but they seem to be able to just kind of stay there and weather the highs and lows and still get new things out of different groups year after year, even when the mix changes.
So I think the fundamental difference between an NHL head coach and even, let's say, a high school head coach, or let's say a private skills coach, is that when you're an NHL head coach, so much of your job is media related, or so much of your job is political, right? And even,
point.
The fact that you are hired or that you're fired is ultimately a political decision that's, dictated by your GM. Whereas if you're a high school coach, a lot of those times, like those coaches are educators by trade. All you care about is you're going to have a player for 4 years, and you're looking to help him or her the best that you can, and maybe in 20 years they'll come back and they'll thank you for what you've done for them, right? Whereas again, at the NHL level, like there's so much sort of non-teaching activities that's taking up your time that most of the teaching is actually done by the assistants, and I would argue that most of the really impactful teaching are done either by player development coaches or maybe even the players' private consultants, because more and more NHLers now are going to work with their sort of quote unquote their guys in the off season, and a lot of them will maintain that relationship for 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, right? They'll work with their strength and conditioning coaches in the off season, their own nutritionist, their own massage therapist. Whereas the people that they work with at the team level, that relationship is much more transactional. And I know that it's a big challenge for everybody to manage those relationships when there's a disagreement between, let's say, your skills coach thinks that you need to do more of A, and then your coach wants you to do less of A, right?
Yeah.
Or your strength and conditioning guy, like, his or her philosophy doesn't jive with what your team is pushing for in the weight room, right? Like, that's a very big challenge, and we've seen relationships between NHL players and their teams be sort of disrupted or even fractured because of that. Jack Heichel's medical care, for example, leading him, and this is going to be a big thing, because every single NHLer now, they get drafted into the league with already a team around them. You may not see them, you may not be aware of who's in that team, but eventually there's going to be sort of a friction, right, between the team that quote unquote owns their rights and the team that they've assembled for themselves.
Man, we could talk about this for a long time. But I don't want to spend too much time without actually getting to your most recent work, which I love. Again, last year's version I devoured pretty well. So this year I haven't finished yet, but I've definitely checked out a few teams specifically and a couple of things towards the front. So I'd love for you to tell a little bit of the story about how you started, before even talking about the tactics themselves, what all was involved with coming up with hockey tactics, writing it, getting it published, what routes you chose to go, what you chose to kind of keep in house, and what that first version was like for you compared to now.
So it was 2020, like in the middle of the pandemic. I just left the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. I was like, what am I going to do for work? There's no hockey being played. No team is hiring. And before I ever got interested in hockey, one of my first interests was reading and writing. Like when I was 5 years old, I was reading at a 5th grade level, because my grandfather was an elementary school teacher. And when I would go to his house, he just had me recite things and read things. And, I became pretty advanced in that. So I always had this thirst for communicating information, and having worked in high level hockey for a number of years, it was just like the first edition, I wrote it, I think, in 2 weeks during a lockdown. It just poured out of me. And over the years, I've added more and more sort of diagrams to really illustrate how NHL teams play. If you get this year's edition, which is Hockey Tactics 2026, you're going to have a chapter on every single NHL team, how they play 5-on-5, how they play special teams. It's all illustrated, really easy to understand for anybody from ages 7 to 97 or 107, what have you. And this year also, what I've added is some reflections on what does it take to develop a really high level player? What are some of the drills or some of the games that can sort of nudge you in the right direction? What are some of the quick tips that you can use right now? So, I've had such great feedback, whether it's from players, whether it's from parents, whether it's from people who want to work in hockey eventually, whether it's in coaches, in coaching analytics or player development. I just think it's the best illustrated resource out there if you really want to understand hockey in a way that's not superficial.
Way back, this was in, I think, 2019 at the Seattle Hockey Analytics Conference. I went there and talked with Ryan Stimpson, who had also written a book that was a little bit more for kind of coaches, but it was especially like youth coaches and stuff. Really, really, really interesting. But I will say, and this is no shade on Ryan at all, it's a great book, but you're especially updating it annually the way that you do with Hockey Tactics. It is very much that level of you can open it, read it, and understand it. It's meant to be both understandable, but not watering stuff down so much to where you're actually missing out on what's going on. Because I do think, and Sean and I have talked about this before, there is so much about the game of hockey, I think more than any of the other major sports, that is just tough to translate on a broadcast because of the pace of the game. That's tough to even communicate in writing, to tell the story of what's happening, just because there's so much description, positioning, body. It's not, both sides, the puck is constantly changing, right? You don't have offense versus defense the way you do in football or baseball, and even basketball. It's a little bit more contained and confined the way things happen. They do tend to be more offense, defense in the way that, in hockey, maybe special teams is a little bit more like that, but 5-on-5 play is a lot more chaotic and harder to describe. But I think this is a great resource for doing that. How have you, what have you found that you have to, as you've done it each year, maybe that you've refined in terms of not necessarily using all the same verbiage you might when you're talking to, say, an NHL player or a fellow NHL coach, where you guys are really in the weeds and you live and breathe this stuff and you might have more shorthand terms. How have you been able to refine it to make it as approachable and digestible as it is?
Actually, the main thing is, like, I try to tweak the format a little bit each year to bring in sort of a fresh perspective or fresh content, because certainly I can just update the diagrams and, this team changed their forecheck and just call it a day, right? But I think this year I've added 2 new sections with, again, it's more oriented toward minor hockey players in terms of their long-term development, because now I've had 6 years of experience with the players I work with, and we really had some great results. And basically the idea is, certainly the tactical side of hockey, it can be complex, but ultimately, once you get, a level of comfort or a level of understanding, now you really understand what the game is all about. So that long conversation we had at first about Lane Hudson, right, and the magic of letting other people do the work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that conversation can happen once you realize that basically most NHL teams, they play more or less the same system. So what actually drives the difference, right? Or, why is it that the players who shoot the hardest or skate the fastest aren't the best scorers? Or what is it that, sometimes it's the small guys who are the best forecheckers? Like, for me, it's like, it's almost like I put out this book to share information, but then we transcend that information. And now we're talking about the real game.
It must be so frustrating at times as a coach when you get questions about, I mean, Sean and I see when we talk, I'm sure, you see on broadcast and stuff too. And from, again, you're in this professional world in a very different, deeper sense in a lot of ways, but we'll ask, how it goes. You have a post-game conference, you ask the coach about this or adjustments, or maybe they mixed up the lines or something like that. And I am sure that like 9 out of 10 times the coach really just wants to say, well, we didn't execute on these things, or this was decision making that I can't go out and make that decision or make that read for them or whatever. Sure, coaches are always trying to get better and make adjustments and look for chemistry, but it's got to be maddening sometimes as a coach when you feel like there's so much we can do, but there's also so much we absolutely can't do either.
So as folks on the other side of the mic, here's maybe a homework assignment I'll leave you, which is, why is it that so few NHL coaches, when their teams are not playing well, why is it that so few of them talk about passing? Because if you ask an NHL coach, like, sorry, an NFL coach, like, why was our offense bad today? Well, our passing game wasn't there. But in all my years of playing hockey and watching hockey and working hockey, like, I very, very rarely hear about coaches say, well, tonight we didn't connect on passes, right? Like, they'll talk about puck management. And usually
checking and breakouts, maybe
that will segue into like, oh, we got to get pucks deep, but honestly, like, when I watch teams that just don't have it, a lot of times just because the pass is too hard or not hard enough or too far in front or too far in the back. It's just, or, the players, like, why do certain players have bad on ice expected goals, or why do certain players, why can't they stick on a first power play unit? What's because they can't give a pass and they can't accept the pass at a level that's appropriate. Right. But it's almost like passing is such a big part of the game, but we just, we like the physical play. We like the forechecking. We talk about breakouts, but it may be more in a positional sense. We talk about effort. We talk about, maybe the, neutral zone play, whatever. But it's just, honestly, like, if you're a team that's really good at passing the puck and you can get it from player A to player B at the right time and with the right level of weight on that puck, like, you can go really far.
So,
Do
so
you
Sean,
think so?
has Detroit been talking about passing lately or not?
No, they've been talking about effort and how it's been effort and not and do the players have it and all of the other all those other fun narratives, I guess. But appreciate you guys. Jack, thanks for taking over half the show for me so I could run over and get the other paid job part of the bite done. Maybe at some point this will be our full-time gig, Robert, but who knows? But I on the passing perspective, Jack, do you also think part of it is that a lot of the consumption and viewership of the show, and this is something, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't think a lot of people broadcasting it, and I think not that hockey broadcasters can blame, it's a tough sport to broadcast, but I don't think a lot of people know what a good and bad passing looks like, right? Like I think unless if we watch an NFL quarterback and they throw the ball 45 times and they complete 38 passes, we can do simple math. Oh, he's good at passing, or it looks like he's good at passing. Do you think part of it also comes back where the general presentation of it too, and the general knowledge is there's a lot of people watching who don't understand. They wouldn't even know what a good or bad pass even looked like, unfortunately. And there are a lot of people who get paid to talk about this game.
So the best quote ever I heard about passing in hockey is a friend of mine is a hockey podcaster, and he traveled to Sweden to talk to a few former NHLers over there. And I think he interviewed Anders Hedberg, who played with Bobby Hall in Winnipeg and then played for the Rangers. And I think Anders said, a good pass is like a handshake between old friends. So what does that mean, right?
That's great. That is great.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
The connection and warmth and, firm, but not too firm. Right. And there's intention behind it. And so that's what it is. Like when you see it, you'll know it.
I mean, it kind of illustrates right there why it's tough to talk about some of these things in the way that they need to be, because they're both either too complex just in terms of breakdown. Well, this guy didn't make himself available, or didn't make his stick available, or he didn't quite cut at a well enough up the middle of the ice to draw this guy's coverage away to open up a lane for by the time you get to that part of the answer, you're like 30 seconds into response as a coach, and no one wants to get into that when you just lost a game 5-3 or whatever in April. But when you see it, you know it. That's man, I can't think of a better analogy for passing that I've ever heard than that.
Yeah,
to be honest.
And I mean, again, if we go back to that Lane Hudson play, like I would encourage everybody to go and watch the 3-3 goal last night, Montreal versus Florida, Nick Suzuki. Like that's a handshake between old friends. Like, if Hudson passed that any softer, any harder, like there wouldn't be a goal. It was just right.
Last one for me, if you have time, Jack.
Sure.
What do you love about the way that the NHL is trending, and maybe what that says about hockey below that too? But what's something that excites you about where the game is headed, based on what you can kind of start to see right now? I guess, Lane Hudson is certainly one that would be at the top, towards the top of my list just as a player, but maybe what more broadly speaking, what excites you about where hockey is and where it could go in the next 5-10 years?
Just like at the highest level, like I try to be part of that solution, but it's just the information is so readily available that if you want to pursue mastery in hockey, no matter where you are in this world, you can pursue that, and there are ways for you to work on your game. And it's not just about being big or strong or being born in Canada and growing up on an outdoor rink. It's you can be from Arizona or from California or from somewhere in Europe, and maybe we'll have an NHLer from Africa one of these days. I know Olaf Kozig was born in South Africa, but I don't think he quite counts. Like the most beautiful thing, the most beautiful reader feedback I've ever gotten was a hockey parent wrote to me, and he said, I'm the head coach of the Singapore national hockey program, which first of all I didn't know existed.
Wow.
We have one rink in our country, and ever since I bought your book and sort of implemented your teachings, we were able to have our best result ever at the IIHF. They play in the lowest division. And his son now is playing hockey in England, I believe, which would be a first for anybody from Singapore. So like I love that. Like I mean, I've worked at the NHL level. Like I've worked with players who were drafted into the NHL, but just like hearing stories like this, like it just proves that, you know, where there's a will, there's a way now, just because of how readily available that information is, and it's just what you make of it.
It's funny you're just talking about the spaces, and I'm active. I was working on a story for next week coming on. There's a kid in the Toronto area now you talk about areas of the world where they can come from. I was just doing a story right now on a kid named Kate O'Rourke, who you probably, if you're in the Toronto area, if you watch Fred's Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, heard Elliot Friedman talk about him, where he's a kid from Round Rock, Texas, who is now applied for OHL exceptional status because of tools, and he got an insight into the game because of the AHL team down in Cedar Park. But part of it is, I've talked to his dad quite a bit, part of it has just been the use of all of these kind of additional tools and the ways to read stuff like that. And I mean, with your book, Jack, I love the story about the Singapore national team. The one thing I wanted to make sure we asked you, and I'm sure Robert didn't ask you while I was tracking a couple other things down, but is there this is my theory, because I think at some point I can help my Wednesday night beer league team get better. I was wondering, do you think there is a way where if I gave a copy of your book to 15 beer leaguers, all of a sudden they would start back checking?
I mean, the thing with beer league hockey, and I played beer league for a while, is, you know, the level of systems that you can implement is really dictated by the player's ability to move in space, right? So for a lot of these guys who are carrying 20, 30 extra pounds, it's tough. It's tough to forecheck. Like lots of teams, like you'll see, either will trap on purpose or just trap not on purpose because they're just not chasing the puck in the ozone. But what I can guarantee is, I think if you share my book with them, they're going to enjoy their time on the ice a little bit more. They're going to enjoy their time watching hockey a little bit more. They're going to become more curious in what they're investing so much time, energy, and money into. And ultimately, I think that just makes the whole thing a more fun and life-affirming experience. So I can't guarantee that they'll start back checking more, but I'll guarantee that you're going to have more fun playing hockey with them. So maybe they will back check because they're having more fun.
On the fun element too, one of the things, so as I had to grab some interviews real quick during the step away, I was talking to Casey Merchant, was one of the players I was speaking to, who plays for the under-18 national team, and they're going to the World Championships next week, or they'll flying out there next week. And one of the kind of fun things about watching, for me, one of the reasons that I have two skills in this business, I realize. Any player I request to speak to will always be one of the last guys off the ice. That is just there is a, no matter what, I always. And so it was kind of fun just to see. There's a group of about 6 or 7 players from the national team where they're playing. I'm trying to get the video to upload, but we'll have to blame producer Sean for not being able to get the video. I took a video of it, but where they were doing a drill with the last puck right on they got the bucket there, last puck, and basically it was a volley style thing around where first guy. So if 3 of us are playing, so Jack, you got to bounce it once on your stick, pass it to me. I got to do it twice. Robert's got to do it 3 times. Has to make all the way around the circle, going twice. Every single guy adding one more, and they weren't letting themselves leave the ice until they did it around the circle twice. So I think there were 7 of them. So basically the last guy had to get 15 juggles in the air before, and then landed in the bucket. And it was just kind of, you were talking about kids seeking out games and fun and everything like that. It was a really cool thing to just have that fresh in mind from the first part of our conversation, and then go and see that in action of just like, this is what we got. 2 guys who are going to be top 30, top 40 NHL draft picks doing this. This is the type of stuff that they get excited about, where it's not a coach telling them to do that. This is the extra 15 minutes of time. And it was a cool thing for me to watch. And I'm going to try one more time to upload the video, try one more time here on this, and then let Robert speak or Jack speak while I try to mess up as a producer here.
Well, I've got a real hot take question for Jack really quick
Sure.
that he could probably answer in 5 words or less, but I'd love to hear his reasoning. Who do you think, we talk about the Lady Byng a little bit. We were talking last week about some PWHL rules and things the NHL could look at. Who do you think should vote for the Jack Adams trophy, the Jack Adams award? Because we talk a lot about the Lady Byng and how that might be better voted on, like the referees, for instance. But if you as a coach had one group of people that should be voting on who's a great coach, who do you think that group should be?
Well, it has to be the players, right? I mean, they're the ones being coached. They're the ultimate consumers of that coaching. So for me, it's got to be the players.
I think we need more of the Ted Lindsay Award type things. Like I'd almost love seeing a complete ballot of all the awards that get voted on by the players, as well as the ones that get voted on by broadcasters and media and GMs. I mean, no offense to any GMs, but them voting on the Vezina is pretty arbitrary. Yeah.
I also don't think. I think this is probably going to get my PHWA card taken away, and I've said this multiple times. I don't think media should vote on most things. I don't think enough media members actually understand the game, or B, understand anything outside their market. And I think that's okay. I think part of the job is, if you're pick any of the 32 teams, if your job as a beat writer is to cover the Carolina Hurricanes, the Calgary Flames, or whatever, no matter what, you watch the game through the lens of, and I know when I was in Dallas, right? I watched the lens of the game of, how does people play against the Dallas Stars? I'm not seeing the NHL in a real lens. I'm seeing Dallas Stars hockey versus the rest of the league on a daily basis. And I think that's one of the things that, once again, probably not the take I'm supposed to be giving. And I'm sure Stephen Wino is going to shoot me a text and yell at me after all this. But like, most writers don't actually know what's happening outside of it. It also goes back to a point Robert and I have spoken about quite a bit, where even when you have other teams in town and everything like that, so many writers still only focus on one half of the game. It becomes, I mean, I was at morning skate yesterday for the game between the Detroit Red Wings and the Columbus Blue Jackets. This isn't shade against anyone, but I was the only reporter that went and spoke to players from both teams. Like, I was at morning skate for Detroit, morning skate for Columbus. I'm the only person speaking to players from both teams, and we're going to have people from both, and we're going to have people who cover the Red Wings who are going to be like, well, I'm going to make a vote on whether Zach Werenski should win the Norris Trophy or not. If you're only looking at the game from one lens, I think that causes a problem. Once again, that's a soapbox issue that I run into, and I'm going to get in trouble, Robert. I need the hook and everything, but save me. So
it's a great full circle moment, though, to what Jack talked about at the top, about how sometimes you have to really respect the ability of really good players to make plays that end up putting people in positions they don't want to be put in, or doing the hard work instead, right? And if you're looking at things not just through one lens of, oh, either these guys did things right or they did it wrong, but, well, they tried this, but these other guys did this thing, and that actually ended up being the more important thing, the elite things the other team did. If you're not trying to look at it through multiple lenses, especially, at least the two lenses of the two teams playing, you're going to miss out on a lot of that, because you might be more focused on what went wrong for one side than what went right for the other. And that's a loss, I think. All right. Jack, thank you so much for your time. Again, I feel like I've learned a lot personally, but I'm not very smart, so there's a lot that I still haven't learned. Hockey Tactics 2026. That'll be in the show notes, a link to it if you can't find it. I have a hunch you'll be able to Google it pretty quickly, but it'll be there. So we'll have that link for everyone to go pick it up. I love it. You can find, in fact, a really cool thing is you can find past years that Jack has discounted them. So you can find past updates of it and compare different coaches in different places to what the system looked like with this team and that team, what's similar, what's different. And they're discounted too. So you can find them for pretty good rate. And in my opinion, to look at that 2020 version and on up. So I think it's great. Jack, thanks for your time. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, guys. I enjoyed the chat. I love this format. I think, again, like I love everything that sort of has depth and has a certain richness to it. And so thank you for the conversation.
Yeah, Jack, let's get on. Robert, I'm going to echo Robert. Love having you on. I appreciate people that understand that we are also a two-man producing crew, and today we had our first challenge of trying to do other jobs as well as we're doing it. So I really appreciate you coming on and doing that. I learned a ton. I really love how I get to look at the game. I remember seeing you speak in Ann Arbor last year when you and I met in person for the first time. Really enjoyed that presentation. So yeah, once again, I can't say it enough. Go buy Jack's book. And I know you got to go pick up the kids, so enjoy the playtime. I know that's going to be fun for you.
All right, take care, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
Bye-bye.
All right, man.
Awesome.
There's so much about. I mean, what you were saying about looking at it from the perspective of another team and hearing from hearing from both teams, even if their perspective is going to be pretty similar. You should at least be trying to hear from both sides. But then pulling back even more, like he was talking about, I mean, I can't remember, you might not have been on at the time we were talking about it, but I was asking about NHL coaches and shelf life and those sorts of things. And he was mentioning that it's a very political decision, which we all kind of know, but the way that he looks at it as someone who's been in that world and had a job that's very dependent on what's happening politically above his head, it's so easy, I think, as fans to want to say, oh, well, this coach got fired because their team did this or didn't do this or whatever. Yeah, that this all is connected, but at a certain point, as a coach, it's got to be, and I think we've seen it in both of us have, from coaches who've either talked about coaches who got fired, or we've covered coaches who have then later gotten fired and new coaches who have come in. And there's a certain level of almost exasperation because there's only so much you can do, and you try to do your thing and you think you do it as well as anyone, and that's why you're in the NHL. But it does come down to, can you actually get everyone to forecheck? Can you get them to skate and do the thing? And even when they might, there's some randomness there too.
Yeah, and I was able to, luckily, I didn't get everything, but I kept the one ear pod in, so I was able to hear you guys talk while I was waiting for some players to connect with. So I was able to listen to most of it. And I think one of the cooler things, just to kind of get the perspective of one of the things I really liked about about what Jack brings is there's an element that I have seen firsthand once in my career. And honestly, someone we should probably also work on getting as a guest on this show is Kelly Forbes, former Stars video coach, and one of the obviously has since Kelly has since stepped away from the hockey world to work actually in the tennis court and pickleball court resurfacing business is what.
Of course, yeah, the most natural.
Not just
never.
Yes, not just surfacing, but resurfacing as well. But he, when it was it must have been the 2018-19
when the challenge got implemented.
Yeah, but it was the 2018-19 season, and it was Jim Montgomery was the coach of the Stars, and I was able to spend a game watching in the video room with Kelly Forbes. I was able to do I was allowed to be in there during each of the three periods. I was not allowed to be in there during the intermission because that was part of the agreement of the deal. And it was a game against the Rangers, and it was fascinating to look at, to kind of see the world of, and Jack is someone who's worked as a video coach and worked in a couple of different spaces, to see how those guys see the game firsthand, and how it all works. And it's given me such a, we should really work on, I'm going to hold ourselves, saying it out loud, and I'm sure we'll be able to get Kelly on. We should get Kelly on because I think it would be a really good just to bring some of the stories in, because there's so many other parts of the video coach role in the moment that once you see it or think about it in a certain perspective, it becomes it really changes how you look at challenges and watch the game live. Like for me, one of the, like I was watching the Saturday, there was the Detroit Minnesota game. There's a play that you're watching, and it was with, I think it was the last play of the game. It would have been the last 15 seconds of the game. I think Detroit entered offside. I'm pretty sure they did. I don't know for sure, but like looking from above, I'm pretty sure they entered offside. They did not score. The game ended. If their goal, it's funny because if a goal had been scored, they would have been able to the other Wild probably would have challenged, and it would have been, and the clock would have gone back. But because no goal was scored, you don't get to go and challenge, say, hey, I want those 25 cents. We broke a different rule. Let us
or a penalty, right? That's always in my mind. Like that's the best / worst case scenario when an entry is probably offside as well. Penalty can't be retracted. So
yeah. Yep. I do think it's that, and so it gives a lot of perspective when you look at that. And I think once we should definitely have Kelly on for that. And one of the things that Jack brought up and talked about too is just the connectivity. And I love that line about this is all, we did not mean for all of this stuff to connect, but so I'm pretty happy that it did. But just the concept of the passing perspective, where like a handshake between old friends is what good passing is. That's such a good line. I wrote that down. That's something that I'm going to go when I go watch when I'm watching some Frozen 4 hockey tomorrow, like that's going to be something fresh in mind when you see how these teams play and how players kind of work together. It's just seriously really fun guest to have on there. So
when you were, I know I'm asking you to think way back, but when you were in that video room, what types of like are they looking for? Oh, look at what their F3 is doing on the forecheck, or oh, look at how they're trying to hold the blue line, or maybe they're targeting a defenseman on an entry. Like what types of, and of course I'm sure they weren't going to tell you everything in the moment, but what were some of the things that stuck out to you that they were specifically looking for?
Yeah, no, to be fair, like this was a pretty open, like they were doing their jobs, and it was I was just basically allowed to sit in the chair and watch. It was very much fly on the wall style. So there wasn't much. It was we kind of created a cadence where if I wanted to ask a question about something, I could, but it was way more about just observing. And one of the first big one is entries, right? Where literally every single entry, and this is pretty uniform across the league, I've learned for video rooms. Every single entry is they know whether it's onside or offside in the video room. Every single one, and they have relayed that to the. It's why maybe there's some that are closer, and there's some where you might kind of go to the. But there's ones where it would be, they would tag it like, hey, that was on or that was off, and there would be multiple times where I was never in the room when a challenge was actually when the challenge flag was thrown or anything like that. Yeah. But there was multiple times where I was basically told, hey, we know that if a goal is scored on this play, we're challenging it. Mm-hmm. We know that right now. We know we're going to it right away. And so that's one thing. The other thing that is just it's all from a data perspective is a data and information perspective. And this is something that it was one of the bigger, funnier takeaways that some people took from the story. Is because they're playing the Rangers, and so the Rangers had the whiteboard, and during a timeout, the Rangers drew up a play on the whiteboard. The Stars video room screen grabbed that and sent it to the bench and to the assistant coach on the bench of what they were drawing, and that was one of those moments where I remember some of the reaction with the article. There was a lot of commentary where people were like, "Well, wait, they're stealing plays." They're like, well. No,
got Bill Belichick up there or something.
But it's This was from the broadcast of this is your and so there's like it's just part of all that data and intel and information, and it also led to there was also conversations about kind of the coach, because there's typically a coach on the bench with the earpiece to the video room, right? And so there would be a little bit more of what are we seeing from this perspective, from this vantage point, right? Because you're not above the ice net. How does this look there? And that there would be sometimes kind of those queries, I'll call it, where it would be, mm-hmm. Hey, and the other part about it, and this is always funny to me because there's a lot of times in hockey we get the watch the game versus analytics crowd, right? We get the kind of we think that they are collision points, right? But really it's the video coach, the video room is probably the best example of how those two things have to exist together. Your video guys are your guys that are best typically put in the best position to help your players understand to understand what those numbers actually mean and how it all works. And that's another like big thing that I think gets lost in all of this because and I can say lost. I think a lot of smart people understand it, but I think that would be one of my big takeaways when people talk about the game and say, oh, well, this is like, I would love to see, like, I don't think the charts are bad, right? Like, I think there's a lot of times you see after a game and you see the game scores and the charts and about stuff like that. But I think they're
mostly expected goals. Those are usually mostly expected goals or shot attempts.
But I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that put in a space where you had where people kind of, this is adding, I understand a lot of people who are putting this stuff out in the public space are doing their own sweat labor and sweat equity and everything. So, but I would love to see another step to that of where is your how does this connect? How does this all apply, right? Like the video side of it, right? Like I'd like to see what the expected goal, like I would like to see the expected goals clipped together for player X versus, like, I think it's going to look way different, right? And it's the classic one for me that goes back to is Ben Bishop was the Stars goalie, right? And Ben Bishop was a big.
He had one stat that he really liked. Yeah.
But when it came to expected goals, his story he would always tell, it would be, okay, if I put Alex Ovechkin in this spot, and then whichever Stars third or fourth liner was in the room and became the unfortunate target of the conversation. So like that's way more of an expected goal than I think. Because I remember at one point it was Jason Dickinson, actually. Jason Dickinson sitting catching strays across the room. It says is like, if I put Alex Ovechkin on the circle and I put Jason Dickinson on the circle, that's not an expected goal for Jason Dickinson. But they're ruled the same in the thing. It's
and I will say some of the more recent models, I know Micah McCurdy's model, and I think a lot of the other ones too, they're trying to do things like involve shooter talent level, right? So if a player is historically someone who finishes at a higher rate, then they look for ways to integrate that in the model. I think the models are getting better each year, but they don't, especially in, when Ben Bishop, we're talking like 7, 8, 9 years ago, that there certainly were a lot that were not integrating that. And that was a valid critique. And frankly, I think it's still a valid critique because, like you said, and Justin Bourne says this all the time too, the data should lead you to video. And that's, if we really had all the resources that some of these places do, then storytelling would also have a lot of video in it too, because it would be great to integrate those things. Unfortunately, it's not really set up for us to do that very easily. And there's rights holders and things like that, but I would love to have more video.
If you'll allow me, and this is going to get unintentionally theological for a second here.
Oh, it's my favorite kind of theological.
One of the things that a rabbi once told me, and it was a great kind of explanation, because and this is not you, and to be clear, this is not going down you should have one faith or the other or whatever, but they said, and this was talking about science and religion, right? And they were talking about how, and according to this rabbi, good science and good religion meet in the middle. And this is from a rabbi. Good science, good religion meet in the middle. Because why does science exist? To explain the world. Why does religion exist? To explain the world. Let's just be clear about it, right? Like at their core, they both exist for that reason. And so you go through history and you have, why do we explain why the sun goes up and down? Well, we don't have the scientific discoveries yet, so that's where we create the stories. That's where we create legends. That's where religion comes from. And as we start to scientifically figure it out, they tend to kind of figure it out. And that's something that's always kind of, I think it's a life philosophy for me on one thing, where it's like, hey, okay, this is where an understanding where it goes. But then it also goes to this hockey level of things, right? Where the quote unquote watch the game crowd, which you should watch the game. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but the watch the game crowd, the anecdotal stories and everything, that's the equivalent of religion, right? We want to be able to explain what happened. We want to be able to do that. The data, the data, so if we go from the anecdotal to the analytical is the science part. And if those two things, if you're coming to the same conclusion from your data and from when you're watching the game, you're doing the right thing. And I think that's such an important lesson and talking point that we kind of that I keep coming to on this, because I joke with the I truly I joked about the book, if I buy the book for the members of my beer league team, are they going to start back checking? But I truly wonder, I do wonder, could you take a beer league hockey team and say, let's try to coach in more than actually try to coach in a system of anything? What would actually happen? And
if you had that any structure, it does not have to be a complex system, but just something cohesive, would it raise their floor, right?
Mm-hmm. Let's one of the things that Jack talked about, and I asked Jack, I want to go down this path with you, Robert, is the way the game is presented, right? And I think one of the reasons that hockey is my view is like, hey, we always hear all the time, it's the best in-person sport, but not a great TV product, right? That's one of the things that is often the kind of echoing point on it. And I think part of that is there's a natural barrier people have to break through to be able to understand what they're watching, right? Like, I think it's football, the NFL, which actually has way more confusing rules than like the two most popular sports in the United States historically are football and baseball, right? Those two actually have the most confusing rules.
Yes.
But
if you've ever tried to explain either of them to like someone who's not from North America,
correct,
and you find yourself like with baseball especially, you have to keep stopping and going back and explaining like 6 more things. It's very in football similarly,
100%,
like who's on the line here? Is this guy covered on the end of the line? Is this guy eligible? Yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
It's you go through all of that, and then but despite that, those sports have a presentation about them that is very consumable, right? You can watch and understand, and part of that is the nature of the breaks, right? Where football, you get every single play there's 30 seconds to there's replay to relive it every single play, right? Or there's the buildup. There's that natural clash moment, right, where you go into the two teams come to the line of scrimmage.
And the objective is very clear: move it this way, or prevent them from moving it this way.
Correct.
As far as you can.
Yes. Correct. And then
whereas with hockey, there's territory, but like territory doesn't equate to getting closer to points necessarily. Like you either get a goal or you don't.
And like the other thing, and there's no way to get this. I don't think there's a good way to get this camera properly, but just imagine watching a baseball game. Now think about how you watch a baseball game, right? And think about the use of technology to highlight where the pitches are, right? Think about that pitch box, right? Like imagine now watching a game. Like it's hard to imagine like watching the game without that, right? Like, So what if we went and is there a world where you were able to take that and apply it to this sport, right? To apply it to hockey, because like I think so many shots, right? Unless you have the low camera down below behind the opposite net. Every shot on a broadcast, and this is just a challenge of broadcasting the sport. Every shot on the broadcast and looks pretty much the same, right? Like it's just like, hey, here's the goal. Puck went from here to here, here to here. That it doesn't there. You don't get that baseball view of high curve, fast, everything like that. Like I think that is another challenge here that.
It absolutely is a challenge, and that's where I really think you need people pushing on the game, not in every way, because there's like offside challenge is a great point for this.
Yeah,
we have the technology to relatively quickly most of the time be able to tell if a play was offside or not. You mentioned video coaches get really, really good at doing this too, as best they can. I would still argue the offside challenge, as it is, more often slows the game down and makes it less accessible than it helps it. But what if we did something like this? What if you had the technology, you found a way to do puck tracking and sorted all the issues of puck tracking to where you literally had, I mean, they have first down lines, right? In football and stuff, like color-coded things. Like, did you get this far?
Yes.
Did you not? When it's fourth down, the line turns red. All these very, very organic, the flag things. They'd use it, basically that technology for like a delayed penalty or a goal. That's pretty much it. What if you had like an offside indicator where it was red? If it's a delayed offside, it was red, or even like the zone, the ice in the zone, get really crazy. The ice in the zone like gets faintly red if it's a delayed offside, or green if the entry is successful briefly, or something like that, just because it immediately tells someone what they're watching, good or not good. And then that they can dive into the rules more, right? First downs, football, there's more there, right, about knee or where you were and down, but just letting people know, what are you seeing? Is it good or bad? Are they succeeding or not? Hockey still, it's a struggle. Like I'm sure you talk to people all the time that'll say, I love going to hockey games, but watching it on TV is a lot tougher. And they've got to find ways to make it better. And I'd be willing to get pretty crazy in terms of the TV product to make it do that. I mean, again, the reason we have the first down line in the first place is because of the puck tracking, the Comet, what they call the glow puck era and everything too. So There's nothing wrong with experimenting. Even if you get something wrong, it'll push the game forward eventually.
Well, the irony of this is, so like we've filmed and produced and had hockey shot and shown in one way for 100 years, whatever it is, right? But the irony is, you know why the red line, you know why the center ice line is checkered?
Can I throw out a guess?
Yeah.
Black and white TVs.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is how on television they kept track. So if you were watching on black and white TV, how do you know center ice versus the blue line,
red line? Yeah.
Yep. That's why. So literally within the fabric of the ice surface, we have something that is there because of television. Yet we have not taken the other advances that we could to kind of put this game the right way. Like, I mean, hockey is the sport where, and obviously you can't do it at every level, but the NHL level with the money involved and everything like that, isn't it the sport where we should be using like drone stuff? Like, should that be the
cameras at the Olympics?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. Like that should be. That's the type of stuff that kind of takes it further. Like in the NFL, right? You get that behind that overhead cam now, right? The one that kind of goes with it and everything like that. That is a technology where I don't know the exact application, but if you're the NHL, you should be looking at that from how do you steal and create your own version of that, right? Like that is, that's a big part of this. So.
I mean, again, you can look at so many. You mentioned the box they had before ABS, right, for the strike zone, stuff like that. Yeah. Fourth down, or if you're kicking a field goal, they'll show distance to field goal. All this stuff that's constantly being put on the ice, and it seems like we're just still at the point where if they're highlighting a player's name during a replay with like an icon around them, because we have these players are tracked now. That already seems like, whoa, we're living in the future or something. Like it's good. I'm glad we have that. It makes it a little bit better. And you want to balance it. You don't want things to get too video gamey and gimmicky to the point where it like turns, a large part of the audience off. But you should be looking for ways to push things forward, because it's only gonna end up broadening the amount of people watching the game, and I think in turn probably broadening the amount of people that play the game too.
And it's on top of that, the broadcast part of it is, I think there are elements of access points, right? Like I think that's one of the other parts that I still don't understand the lack of the usage for. Like at IHF events, you get the cameraman who's dressed in all white and goes out there during the and the Memorial, they do it for the Memorial Cup too, and they go out there and they get like, that doesn't take a lot of effort, right? To get the skating cameraman, not during play. They're going to get, I understand it's not during play, but it's just in between and everything like that. And it's just kind of one of those things.
Ref cams, right? We've seen occasionally during specific games, like national network channels might do it. In the KHL, I think their refs wear cameras a lot of the time, and you'll see some interesting clips from that sometimes, where there's probably language and things that you wouldn't necessarily hear in a North American broadcast. But yeah, just look for ways to get more cameras in places that you can't see, because there's literally boards. There's literally a barrier preventing you from seeing what's happening on the near side of the ice. We got to open that space up somehow. You got to find a way to show people and then tell them about it.
I've always wondered about the idea of, and not necessarily for NHL games where you've got, I've always wondered about the idea of at what point would it start making more sense to have the glass all the way down to the bottom? Now, obviously,
like transparent boards, basically.
Yeah, all the way down. Like, at what point would that make a ton of sense, right? Because it's definitely something they should do for the outdoor games. Let's be clear on that. That's something they should 100% do for the outdoor games, because for the viewership, you've been doing an outdoor game before. The viewership is very odd for an outdoor hockey game.
Yes.
Right. So
yes.
Something should
especially in baseball stadiums in that first level.
But you go to practice quite often in Frisco and everything like that. And just think about the star setup, where just imagine if you had glass all the way down. I mean, it doesn't even have to be all of it, but all of a sudden creates another viewpoint, creates another kind of appreciation as opposed to having to do the duck, like just the look over the boards, right? Like, I just think that's the type of stuff that would be really cool to see and to experiment with and everything. So
especially because of, I can't remember the percentage, but it's some crazy high percentage of hockey is played along the boards. Like that's where the puck is most of the time.
Yeah.
So why we should be looking for ways to see it.
I think it's 80% of the game is played within 3 feet of the boards.
That sounds
like
right.
I think that's just, which is crazy to think about. Like it's the 80% of the game where the puck is, and
yeah,
there's a lot of numbers about the sport that that line to me is actually that 80% of the game is played within 3 feet of the boards is something that's one of those, like, there's been multiple times I hear a stat or a line that stick in my head. And that's one of the ones that's changed how I looked at the game. Jack's handshake line from earlier is one that is going to stick with me for a long time. Another thing that I've always thought about too, just like, and I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, I realize, but like one of the ways I watch the game and everything is, I remember at a coaches conference hearing basically saying hockey is a game of basically, depending on the length of the game, is basically a game of roughly 300 races. That's basically what it is. It's 300 races. If you can win 200 of those 300 races, you're probably winning the game. And it's, if you break it, like it's a lot of sports are like that too, right? But that's like, I think those are the things that have kind of stuck with me about how I watch the game. And I know we're not trying to give a seminar or chat on how to watch the sport, but I do think that's something that we almost need, right? Like I think one of the best attempts at it is Greg Wyshynski wrote the book "Keep Your Eye on the Puck," right? Yeah. And so, but I do think there's been, I do think there's a lot of, we talk about it making the sport connecting. I do think there's a lot of tools and resources, and maybe I'm giving us more homework right now. Fine for doing it, but like, take
your eye off the puck, Greg Wyshynski.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Sorry, take your eye off the puck, and that's something that we should. There's kind of those touch points of how do you teach the game a little bit more, and which I think is actually, so. This is a good segue here.
Speaking of teaching and the
game, let's teach.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we should go. So
you're hopping on a plane later today.
Yes, I got an 8:15 flight tonight out to Las Vegas for the Frozen Four, where we will have North Dakota, Denver, Michigan, and Wisconsin. 33 national titles combined between those four teams, and for a national championship. Played at T-Mobile Arena, home of the Vegas Golden Knights. I really wanted to take some time to chat a little bit about college hockey, because and we're going to do that for a little bit, and then if all goes according to plan, no promises, but we do have another guest, hopefully, that I think is going to, that will get people excited. So
about that guest, if all goes.
Yes, if it all comes together, I'm going to be pretty thrilled about that. But just kind of with Frozen Four and college hockey, it's also a really interesting time to talk about it, because we have this year the presumed number one pick in the NHL draft is going to be a college hockey player, Gavin McKenna, who went from playing in the WHL to playing college hockey, and is now going to probably have his name called number one in a system and setup that.
You think he still goes number one? You work for Elite Prospects. You think he still goes number one?
I still think so. I don't know for sure, but I still think so.
Okay.
I think there's if you're going into the draft world and everything like that, and this is a great, at some point we should have a draft like expert on from a team to talk about stuff, but like there's the highest floor versus highest ceiling. And I think if you're going number one, if you're picking 1-1, I think you need to be, I think highest ceiling always wins out, right? Because like I think there's some players that are going to present maybe a higher floor, just guaranteed floor, but don't know what the ceiling is. Some of those other guys, like there's a Verhoff from North Dakota who we're going to see this weekend. Albert Smith's the Latvian defenseman. Really good play. If I'm picking in the top 5, very thrilled with them. But I think the ceiling is there for McKenna. But he was able to play college hockey this year because of the changing rules for the NCAA, where NCAA went and allowed CHL players were now eligible. And it's completely changed the landscape, right? It used to be if you played college hockey, if you played major junior, you were not able to play. College hockey. You just weren't eligible. And one of the funnier parts about that whole story, Robert, that I remember from the fight for it was one of the cases that was made. And I want to be clear, like there's some people who actually have this story down pat a little bit better. But the thing that always stuck with me that was fascinating was one of the sports that was used as kind of like a benchmark for why CHL players should be allowed to play in the NCAA was actually golf. Because in golf, right, a player can keep their amateur status, go play in a professional tournament as an amateur, right? And then even though they're playing against pros, they are still an amateur. They're not being paid. They can then return and keep their college eligibility because they maintained as an amateur. That was one of the cases that was essentially used for, you talk about the junior hockey element, where these guys aren't being paid to play hockey. They're playing against some people who are being paid. They're playing against, but they are not. They themselves are still amateur. So that was that's one of those funny notes about this story is how college golf was somehow a little bit of a skeleton key that was used in some cases. I don't know what the final straw was. I know there's some antitrust stuff that obviously came into play as well, but it's like that. But obviously, college hockey is now a fascinating dynamic, and there's obviously some other news potentially coming out about this potential 5-year plan. I read a story about it was Ross Dellinger. I read something about today about there's a look for not just hockey, obviously, but all NCAA sports where you get eligibility for 5 years, and it's a big part of the future of it, and it's also something that I'm fascinated to see. I'm fascinated to see the evolution of it. I spoke to Scott White, the Texas Stars GM, the assistant GM for the Dallas Stars, who, as our pal, I can call him our pal because he's on the show.
Yes, friend of the show, pal, personal close friend. Yes.
Friend of the show, Elliot Friedman reported Scott White is in the running for the Nashville Predators job, and as you could imagine, when I asked. Scott is not commenting on anything of that sort now. So, but he and I have talked about college hockey, right? And it's the whole, like, there's the evolution where there's so many different paths where this could go one way or the other that we don't know the evolution of it. Makes it kind of exciting and scary at the same time.
I really think that college hockey is something that, for me, the entry point to college hockey is almost trickier than juniors unless you like went and saw it and felt it. Because the product is great. Everyone will tell you, like, go to a college hockey game. It's the best. Like it's crazy. It's loud. You have a band, a cheering section. Like it's a bunch of college kids. It's like going to a college football game. Like it's that level of just awesome. But in terms of the product, it's so different to me. Like just the way I thought about it, as someone who didn't grow up playing junior hockey or college hockey or anything. Junior hockey, at least you can kind of see, okay, this is very much North America, Canadian. Like you see the nascent kind of traits that you start to see at older ages, whereas college hockey is different. The schedule's different, right? You play 2 games a week and they're usually like back to back same weekend, right? Like that's the common schedule, and they're all wearing cages, so that's already a little bit different than some of the visors or bubbles you see at other places. What to you do people need to know to jump in? Why should people watch college hockey, and what makes it worth diving into aside from some of the names that you mentioned?
Yeah, I do think part of it is it's unfortunately it is a regionalized sport, right? Like there has been some of that Western expansion. Arizona State as a team now, and
Artem Schlane, Texas Stars forward. Artem Schlane came from ASU.
Yes, and there's and obviously with the event being in Vegas this year, actually 2027, I believe, the USA Hockey Hall of Fame Classic is going to be at the Cedar Park Center between the University of North Dakota and Michigan State. So for some of our Texas-based listeners, hopefully there's a place for you to watch there. And also we can continue to I know one of the things I've always I will continue to poke Brad Alberts about Stars president. Brad has said that he would love to someday to have a Frozen Four at American Airlines Center, which ironically, out of all of the suing and countersuing between the Dallas Mavericks and Dallas Stars, Mavericks pulling up shoot and leaving, and there being a hockey first building. Maybe we do get a Frozen Four in Dallas.
I mean,
really fun.
Nice shiny new building. Yeah, who knows?
Yes, but to the point of like what is to me that the atmosphere is what makes it great. I think that's one of the great things about sports. I think I think if you can connect with the atmosphere and you can connect with the energy, the passion about it, that's what makes it great. Like I remember for me, you go to, if I was to try to sell someone on college hockey, I would tell them to go to a game. I would tell them just go to a game, because I think there's so many buildings where you would just go pick out the energy of it. Don't go to a regional, because the regionals are at dumb neutral sites where there's no one in the building and they're poorly placed, but go to any game where there's actually a team playing a home game. And there's such a great vibe about it and energy about it. The game means something. There's, I know college sports have evolved, but there is something about all of that that is such a great, just such a great connector. Like I know there was players who have gone who've left the major junior route, who have gone to the NCAA. And one of the things I've spoken to several of them, one of the things is like the easiest recruiting pitch is when a team brings them to campus for a game. That experience of on-campus hockey is incredible. And so the Frozen Four is going to be a little bit more distilled, a little bit, just because it's going to be in an NHL building and everything like that. But you're going to have a really large, I'm expecting North Dakota to travel really well. All four of those fan bases should travel really well. Wisconsin and Michigan have large alumni bases. Denver is the smallest of the four schools, but has a proud history. So it should be a really good atmosphere. The hockey is going to be good. And then it's closest to, there was a viral clip that I want to address carefully, where someone said, you know what, some college hockey teams could go compete with NHL teams, and then they circled back and said, well, they can compete with AHL teams. I don't think that's fair. I think that's an unfair assessment of anything. But I do think that the NCAA hockey is closer to the NHL style-wise. I think that's an important part of it, where there's not a lot of time and space. It's chaotic, right? There's chaos. Right. It's all about time and space. Things we talked about with Jack earlier, making others make mistakes and everything like that is such a big deal. And there's kind of that, and the individual skill and the top end skill things, them breaking out and showing in kind of in that compressed atmosphere is even more impressive. So like I think college hockey has so many NHL vibes. I'm not going to go and pretend a college hockey team could beat a pro team. I think that's not a fair.
Yeah. Well, and you see it with college play, even good college players who, James Higgins, I think, just played a couple games for Providence, right, in the AHL, and they'll come in, and if the really, really top ones, like top 10 draft picks, like Higgins, they might come in, and the best you can say about them is they don't look completely overwhelmed, right? You'll see players, whether it's Justin Riscovian's a good example of someone who came to the Texas Stars out of college last year, and or I guess year before last, or whatever, on an ATO. Yeah. And you need those couple of months. There's a reason they do it. They don't expect, Trey Taylor, another player, they don't expect that player necessarily to have a big impact right away. Occasionally they do, but a lot of times the big value, I'm sure in your conversation with Scott White, people like that, when you're covering the Texas Stars, a lot of the big value there is just acclimation, just understanding what this league is compared to the college league that they were playing in, because it's going to take some time and they'll need some runway to really get there the following season. But it's really, really hard to jump in to any professional league, let alone arguably the second best league in the world.
Well, I do think the hardest jump on a player's career is from either junior or college to the AHL. I think there is there's a more difficult kind of staying power issue from going from being a quad A player in the AHL to making it in the NHL. So there's something to that that's a little bit more difficult. But then but I just think from the raw kind of adjustment scale going from junior hockey or college hockey to playing AHL hockey, I think is one of the most difficult adjustments. That's why I think sometimes now that there is some adjustment time, but I think we overblow the European adjustment. I think there's times like there is an adjustment. I want to be clear on that, but I do think there's too many times like I think that's why you see players come over from Europe, and I think if I would have more confidence throwing a player from the Finnish Liga or the SHL like right away into a game. Like just obviously there's different cases of everything, right? Like Porter Martone goes from Michigan State to scoring a big overtime goal for the Flyers the other night, right? Like, so there's obviously going to be exceptional cases, but I think just if you're talking about the average player coming from college hockey or junior hockey versus the average player coming over from a top European league, there's a big jump for that with the professionalism, and it's not just about how you act; it's just the game itself too.
What then are you looking for as someone who goes to whether you're technically scouting or covering or observing players, analyzing them, when you're looking at college players, knowing that there's a very unique sort of jump, more for some, less for others, like Martone or even McKenna. What are you still looking for those players, especially maybe those that aren't in the top 5 or top 10 necessarily, that tells you readiness and whether certain skills will translate or certain ones won't? Because it is a bigger league. They're bigger. They're playing against, quote unquote, playing against men, as they like to say, as opposed to juniors. So what are you looking for?
Chaos control. Just honestly, it's chaos control and chaos creation. I've written about this before from the sport, where I think this is one of my views of
a good piece at Shop Shots. Everyone should go read it.
Yes, definitely. And you might even be listening live there right now, because I think we set up well to the simulcast. What there? This is the good type of simulcast, not the one that is this is not the time that makes it hard to call a game for radio when you're calling a game for TV. That's another thing. But to go back to that, but create chaos control, I think, is a big thing. How well does a player handle the chaos? And I think that's something that you can watch as levels go up through the level, right? Like last week, I was watching some of the top 15 and 16-year-olds in their OHL draft year, right, at the OHL Cup last week. And you're seeing calmness, coolness, how a player handles those moments of someone's coming at you, right? Like you're getting the Vorchecker in your face, how you handle that. I think those things are all pretty reflective of it. Obviously, there's individual skills, but I think how the game is thought up here, where how the game is played between the years is such a big thing. Last week after we did this show, I ran into when I was in Toronto, I ran into Wyatt Johnston's parents, and Wyatt, we talked about Wyatt before, and we were talking about some examples from his game. But I remember talking to Wyatt's dad, and his son's a 22-year-old in the NHL and having great success and everything like that. And why is there, from his perspective, I asked him, like, when did you know Wyatt was a good player? Like, because I'm always fascinated to ask parents this, right? Like, if you ever got a kid who makes the NHL, at some point you knew, if you are a reasonable parent, let's rephrase it. If you are a reasonable parent, at some point you've realized that your kid is exceptional in some sense of the word. Where it's
some of these things are easier for them than they seem to be for the other kids.
Yes, and this is more than just a game, right? Like for example, like when it was with like Jake Ottinger, like I wrote about Jake a couple months back in a piece over at D Magazine, and talking to his dad about it, and Jake basically saying, well, Jake's dad being very open and honest about, like, I didn't really think he was that great of a goalie. Like, that's his own dad being like, and I love hearing this perspective from people who have like the parents of players who have reached a certain level. And from Wyatt's parents' perspective, talking to them, it was kind of on the line of, you know what? He was always playing up and everything like that. And apparently he was on skates. Like at a year old, he already was skating, right? Like it was just an incredible timeline of like, it's funny. Like we think, quote unquote, he's not a late bloomer. He's 22, but he gets the asterisk late bloomer because of where he went in the draft and because of the COVID year, right? Like he's someone who we can all agree that if not for the COVID season, there's no way he drops to wherever he was at 22, right? Like there's no way he drops to that slot. So, but the thing was, you know what? For them, it was the way that he didn't panic, and they were saying watch him play, right? Like it was the way that you would watch him play against older kids and watch him against higher competition and everything, and the way that things would be happening, and he just had control over the moment. And obviously there's a little bit of there's a bias from a mom and dad on this, but it's interesting to hear like that for them, that was it. It's like when he's playing against older kids and you see him in a tournament and you see the composure, that's so big. And I think that's the other part of it, because I think that's actually going to become more and more important personally with the growth of as kind of players grow within the game. Because I think, as I was just talking about, watching the U18 national team practice over here, and I said this to Jack on the phone, the skill level, and this is the thing. I mean, Gary Bettman loves this line: "Our game has never been better." That's Gary's line that he loves now, right? Like
he does.
But there's a but I think the base level for what is a highly skilled player is so much higher now, right? Like if it was here before, now it's here. If there's a, and we talked about it last week, right? Like we're talking about, I think we brought up the Adam Ernie Michigan goal that I remember watching in practice at one point. So I think that's part of it. So I think so much of it used to be, can you be bigger, stronger, faster? And that's still important. But now everyone has to be bigger, stronger, faster. And now it becomes, what can you do up here? Because like the AHL has never been better. The NHL's never been better. The AHL's never been better. And so the game just continues to evolve in that way. And I think and we kind of started this talking about college hockey and everything like that. And I think that's one of the parts for me about the college hockey evolution that's going to be really fascinating, because it is the schedule often comes down, and this is my theory. I want to be clear. I'm testing this to you, Robert, and our listening audience. So
okay. You're not under oath right now. Okay.
Yes, but we know the schedule is better for strength and conditioning. We know that, right? I mean, Michigan State's Will Morlock is Michigan State's strength and conditioning coach, and we know that he's also the coach for the World Junior team and under 20. We know the stories about him, so we know that schedule is. We know the schedule for college hockey does that, right? You get the 5 days a week. You get the 5 days to practice and train and build up and everything like that. But I also think there's part of
recovery is such a huge part of strength and conditioning. And there's no time for it in a compressed schedule. So, yep.
I also think there's a bit of the do or you don't schedule nature of it. When you only play 38 games, if you F up on Saturday night, you got to sit with it for 6 days. I'm serious, right? Like it's I think there's a little bit of the natural pressure of it. Think about if you're playing and you got to find a way to be consistent in the NHL. And like if you're playing Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, like you are in many junior leagues, and you're playing 65 games a year, there's going to be more B games, and those B games are going to be more acceptable because you have another game in 24 hours, and then you have another game after that in 36 hours.
Yep.
I think in college hockey, your B game is going to be way more obvious because you only get to do it 38 times, right? You only get to do it 40 times. And I think that's another part of kind of the element of that as well.
Makes a lot of sense. There's so much about, I mean, we talked about it in football and the TV product about how having that time after every play changes the way you consume it and perceive it so drastically, because you have that time to digest it, to highlight what was done well, what wasn't done well. Like, imagine trying to describe and analyze an offensive lineman in football if you had, only 3 timeouts per quarter or whatever, only 3 stoppages, guaranteed stoppages or whatever, like TV timeouts, that had any length of time to really break down, analyze, show a couple of, oh, this is why this block worked, or this is why I got a holding penalty here. Hockey is just so different in terms of observing it. So when it comes to evaluating players and evaluating talent, I think that cycle is very analogous in a lot of ways. You have that weekly cycle of, okay, how'd they do in this test? A lot of times, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times I think those 2 games in a weekend might even be against the same team, or at least they could be. So you get to see, like you said, an A game and B game in a very controlled environment where it might even be the same opponent, or they're both on equal footing because they're both playing their second game in 2 nights, as opposed to a mismatch where one team might be and one team might not be.
It is one of the interesting dividers too for college hockey, because I think the difference between a good and great team can often be from the coaching adjustment perspective, right? Because a typical regular season schedule, right? You're playing the same team Friday, Saturday. That's the typical schedule. But you get to there's the regular season in-season adjustment where you play the same team Friday, you play the next team Saturday. There's a chess match, right? You're going to adjust whether you won or lost. Maybe you keep doing the same thing. Maybe you adjust. Either way, there's going to be an adjustment. When it comes to the NCAA tournament and the regionals and then the Frozen Four this weekend, it's different. You're going to have you had all week to prepare. You had 5, 6, 7, 8 days, whatever it is, to prepare for game 1. And that's what you did. You did all the effort for that. Then the 2 teams that win tomorrow are going to have 24 hours. And I'm sure they've definitely done some back video prep and everything like that for the next potential opponent. But you didn't do 5 days of video scouting for it. You didn't do 5 days of prep with your team. You didn't run practices based off of that. And I think that's the other part about just an interesting kind of college hockey element that you're going to see. And I think that's one of the reasons that, like, I go into it's hard for anyone to ever not pick a David Carl coached team in a Frozen Four, but like that's why like I go to the Frozen Four this weekend and I look at that Michigan team, where the way they play and the way they do a lot of things, they're going to be a very hard team to beat without a lot of prep, because they do a lot of there's a lot of puck possession things. There's a lot of kind of unique ways that Michigan attacks that I think aren't as easy to prep for as some of the other teams.
Now, okay, so this is making me think of something that Glenn Goldson mentioned today after the Dallas Stars practiced, where he was asked about, now that the Stars know for sure that they're going to play the Minnesota Wild in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, he was asked how much, well, they play them one more time in the regular season tomorrow on Thursday, but they also, leading up to the playoffs, how much you analyze and prepare for a team. Goldson actually said a few weeks ago that they had already started doing part of their daily prep was already just Colorado and Minnesota, because they knew that one of those 2 teams was going to be their first round opponent. But obviously you can dial it in more now. But something Goldson said that I thought was really interesting today is that a lot of that prep involves watching games Minnesota has played against teams that maybe play similarly to Dallas in certain aspects. So it's not necessarily just prep on how have we looked against them or what do they do, but you try to find the closest analog you can and the comparables in their opponents that might resemble some things you do. Now with a David Carl coach team, I don't know that there are too many analogs, like you said, and his track record might kind of lend itself towards that. But again, as Jack Hahn said, there's also a lot of things that are very, very similar, broadly speaking, among the better hockey teams. So maybe that prep can be done analogously, at least to a certain extent.
Well, maybe like if you want to do the exercise at home, I know a great book that someone can go and compare and do side by side comps to kind of look at it. Yeah, I think it also goes back to my point that we made earlier about how so many times you look at the game from the perspective of you see hockey as your game of hockey versus everyone else, right? Like that's kind of the element that's an interesting kind of dynamic at play here. I also think from a coaching prep standpoint, it is you don't want to flood your players with information. I think you have to be very careful on that. I don't think you want to flood your players with information, but I think you can flood your staff, right? Like, I think that's okay. Like, I think you can go through all the little nuances and all the nuances and tendencies for so many different places, right? Like, and then you don't know when you're going to need them, right? Like it's the whole, like, why do you scout the backup goalie? Well, if you're the Minnesota Wild, right, you're going to assume Jake Ottinger's going to play every game. You're going to have your Jake Ottinger scouting report, but you're going to still spend the time to have the book and the scouting report for Casey Smith, because it's important to have that, because you never know when you might need it, right? Like, it's just like there's so many little tools like that I think are important of how do you do that, right? Like, I think about if you're getting ready for, so I obviously watched Minnesota live on Sunday against Detroit, right? And it's a game where you go and Kaprizov has the hat trick and the 3 goals and everything like that. So there's obviously, you're going to worry more about his tendencies and Matt Boldy's tendencies than some others, but at the same time, there's going to be little things that you don't know when and where you might go to a guy on a bench, or maybe it's and I'm making this up right now, but maybe you're Neil Graham on the bench and you pull Justin Ritzkovian aside and say, you know what, Brock, we know that Brock Faber, when he does this, he likes to take it wide along the wall when you see this. So this is when you do that. Like, you don't know when you're going to do that. And I think that's the part. You flood your staff and you flood your database for everything else, and then you get more selective in how you give that to your players.
Well, and that's kind of what Jack was talking about. When you're breaking down a video with a player, the messaging and keeping things, even having some of that playfulness integrated, not just into I don't think it just needs to be integrated into the drills. And I would suspect he would say the same thing. You also want to keep it pretty light and keep a player kind of in that more open mindset, even when you're imparting information like that, because you want it to seep in, you want it to be there so that they can win that one extra race out of those 300. You never know when that might be, and you have to pick your spots. And as a coach, you have to be good at being able to recognize this is not a time when this player can absorb this extra piece of information, or this is the exact right time to give them that extra piece of information. It might be in game, it might be the night before, it might be the morning of, you take them aside at morning skate really quickly, or maybe a video session. Who knows, right? But just finding that right time to give them that information, which only happens if you've done the work yourself. If you have that, Jeff Reese knowing something about Mackenzie Blackwood ahead of time that he can pass on, or like it could be a video coach who's, hey, by the way, this is what we're seeing up here, guys. Maybe tell someone that the F2 always likes to do this route every time, F1 does this or whatever.
There was if anyone, you should be listening to this show first, obviously, but if there was a really good episode that my pal Dmitry Filipovich did on the PDO cast in Colorado, where he had Jared Bednar on, and they were talking about some things. And one of the things that was interesting that they were talking about the high Colorado, a lot of teams doing it, and Jared Bednar pushed back that we were the first one, that he said a lot of teams were doing it well, but Colorado, they don't do it nearly as much as they used to, but Colorado would have the center high in the zone way more often than other teams, right? And it was something that, especially with Nathan McKinnon, so there would be a lot of times where Nathan McKinnon would be up, they'd be 3 up top almost, and they did that so much. And then teams, then the league really adjusted to it a ton, right? And now it's something, there's parts where there's sets that it happens in game now here and there, but it's not something that is that's near the general. So I think that's the type of those are the type of tendencies that Are you going to flood your defenseman with, hey, watch for the center high? Maybe in a moment, but it's not something that you're going to pick those 3 clips. You're going to pick those 3 tendencies to focus on yourself too.
And you know that they know that you know that too. So you want to make sure that you don't get your players so keyed up and ready to exploit this one thing, only to have them do that and then immediately adjust because they realize, oh, they're expecting us to do this one thing. So, okay, we're going to, because players are so good. I mean, that's the whole chess match when we talk about it. Players are really good at recognizing it only takes once or twice to realize, oh, they're ready for me to do this. And usually if a player doesn't make that adjustment, the coach will let them know and they'll make that adjustment pretty quickly.
Yeah. Actually, this is a perfect segue because speaking of coaching, I'm very excited about our surprise guest for the viewers. It's not a surprise for him. He knew we were going to bring him on, but we're going to bring our good friend, saw him yesterday in person in Detroit, the coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Rick Bowness is going to join us now, Robert. So I'm very excited about this. So let's add him to the stage here.
Me too.
Bones, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Good. Good.
How's Buffalo?
I haven't been outside yet. It looks cold. Just been trying to, obviously big game for us tomorrow. So just doing a lot of work from our game last night. Then you got to prepare for Buffalo. So just had a meeting with all the coaches getting ready for that. So it was nice we got that win last night. We absolutely 100% needed it. And now we're going to need that one tomorrow night just as badly. So tough opponent coming in here tomorrow with Buffalo. They're playing great. Lindy and the staff have done a great job. So it should be a great game.
Take us through a game ends last night. You guys have a big emotional win and everything like that, win in overtime, come back and everything. And now you have your meeting today. What's the kind of 24 hours like for working on yourself and then also getting ready for the Sabres at the same time? How do you balance that out?
Well, we flew in here late last night, right after the game, and then you get up and you break down our game. I've got the assistant coaches. They all take a period each and break it down. I do the whole game, and then we sit down later today and we go over everyone's clips, decide which of the ones we want to look at. We all know going into it, okay, there's certain areas we have to clean up a little bit. In my mind, we're still giving up way too many chances against. We're giving up. We're letting teams come at us with a lot of speed. So I tell the coaches, look for these clips that we need, how to slow these guys down. So we get all that organized for the team meeting in the morning. Then we go over the Buffalo stuff for the clips that we will show tomorrow night. And that's just more of a pre-scout. But our guys really like, it sounds like a lot of meetings, but what's come out, like since I've been here, our players really like the meetings in the morning and going over a review of the game from the night before, so they can put it to bed and see all the good things they did, see the things we've got to correct. And then when they come in at night, they're just ready to focus on, they're getting out to the Buffalo. And tomorrow night we'll show a couple of clips of Buffalo. But I really like this group because of that. They all keep telling me that we want those reviews in the morning after the game. They really enjoy it. So when they say that to you, you got to make sure you're showing them the right stuff. But this has been a great group to coach. So that's kind of like the day. Tonight we'll go out and watch the Buffalo play the Rangers.
Rick, thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate it. I'm curious, has that changed even among different teams, your last couple of teams, and how much has that changed maybe from some of your first couple of teams in the league too, the way you do video and how much they want and how much they can kind of ingest and then put on the ice?
You're right. That's a good point. No, some teams like a lot of it. Some teams just want you to hit 5 or 6 points and that's it, and then move on. Some teams want a lot of more, really just focus on our own team, which is what this team is all about. Some teams just show us 5 or 6 things and let's get ready for the next team. But it's important, especially like right now, we slipped a little bit. It's important, and our guys feel that we have got to tighten things up a little bit, and they feel it. So I like when they come to me and say, okay, we gotta look at these. They know, they now know what we should look like when we're playing well. And when teams are coming at us with speed and getting chances, they know that's not how we're supposed to look. So they've really taken upon themselves to come to me and really push to get more clips on us. Other teams, okay, one or two clips, look at that. Okay, let's get ready for the next team. So it does depend on the team. Some guys don't want a lot of video. Some guys are visual learners. Some guys are audio learners. So it all depends on your team. But as a coach, you just got to make those adjustments. Some guys have a tough time with group settings, so you learn to deal with them one-on-one and all the issues so it just depends on your team, depends on the individual, and as a coach, we just have to adjust to that.
How long did it take you to kind of recognize kind of those personalities with the group? Like when you stepped in and you joined this team with about 35, 36 games to play, what's kind of the timeline for you as you start to get to know them and get to know their personalities of, hey, player A this is going to be this teaching style, or maybe the player B is this teaching style. Like how long did that take you to kind of on the fly get in within this group?
At least a month. But, again, when I came in, I didn't know these players. I didn't know the assistant coaches. So I relied on them an awful lot. And then you've got to take the time to get to talk to them as much as you can. You just got to adjust to them. But you got to get to know them. You got to know what was going on before you get here. And then, honestly, Sean, it just becomes, okay, this is me. This is how I do things, right? So you guys better get used to that, right? So it's me adjusting to them a little bit, getting to know them a little bit. But right off the bat, I just came in and said, okay, this is how I do things, and this is where we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do, and then we'll both adjust as we go along. So they learned right off the bat that I'm, coming in here, we're giving up way too many goals. We're giving up way too many chances. We're tightening this ship up or we're not going to make the playoffs. So the guys were very, very receptive to that right off the bat. But it's me coming in, okay, I'm doing this. And then it's me making sure I talk to all the individuals, talk to the leadership group a lot to see, okay, what do you like? What don't you like? Do you need more? Do you need less? So there's a lot of communication there. There's a lot of give and go with the leadership group and with the other players as well. But so I've been fortunate. This group is very receptive to the video, very receptive to the way I do things.
Rick, I heard a musician tell me one time that the thing that separates the very, very best musicians from the decent ones is their ability to know when not to play. When to take a beat and not have to fill all the space with all of their talent and all of the notes that they can. Have you found that to be the case as a coach too, that it's not always just about you being able to recognize and communicate all of the things that you've learned and that you're seeing, but also knowing when to step back and when not to say things? Is that a balance that you've learned?
Yeah, that is a balance, and you've got to know when your team is rattled a little bit and how to calm them down. You got to learn to, okay, we got to get this thing cranked up a little bit and how to do that. And sometimes, sometimes you play a terrible game and you find a way to win it. So then you go in the next day and say, okay, we got away with one. Or you play a great game and you lose, then you've got to go in and say, it's okay, we played a great game. We did a lot of good things. So a lot of it depends on the game. And yeah, you do have to have a good feel for that. You can't go after them when the last thing they want to hear is a coach yelling at them. But they also know, okay, the coach needs to get our attention here again. So the players feel that, but you're right. There's a timing of that. There's a feeling involved with that. It's getting to know your group. Listen, honestly, I'm still getting to know these guys. It doesn't take a couple of months. It takes training camp. It takes a full year to get them see how they handle all different situations. We were going so good for a while, and then the pressure kind of got mounted a little bit, and all of a sudden we weren't handling that as well as we were. So that's been my challenge for the last couple of weeks, is help them learn how to handle the pressure that comes with being in a playoff spot. All year long, they've been chasing everybody, right? So now it's a little easier, right? Now all of a sudden, when you move up, now people are chasing you. Right. So it's a whole different approach. So I've kind of been working with them a little bit about right now, about how to handle that. And it's all about the process. So we always keep the process, coaches, we all say the same thing, process, one shift at a time. So we've been doing a lot of that. But then you'll see some individuals you can tell, okay, they're uptight. They're not handling this very well. So now you just got to go to them and spend some one-on-one time with them and help them get through it.
When you talk about, Rick, process and the way a team plays and instilling it, obviously there is always going to be, there's different roles on a team too, right? Like there's going to be some guys who are there, like you have some defensemen who, well, your forwards, you've been looking for some more offense out of your forwards. You have some defensemen that have really put the puck in the net this year. How do you kind of, as a coach, how have you kind of evolved when it comes to green lights versus yellow lights for guys in various roles to kind of open it up and let them, I guess, be a little bit more creative offensively and still applying the structure there?
Well, I've really gone after, this is your role. All I've ever said to a player, your role is to be as good a player as you can be. Like I've never put limitations on anyone. I've never said you can't do that, or you can do this when you know he can't. I've never said this is like this is your role. That's all I want you to do. Their role as a hockey player is to be as good a player as they can be. And I've kind of always opened that door to them and let them play a little bit. I wasn't a very good player, but I always hated when a coach said to me, just get it out and get it in. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm a little better than that. Not much, but a little better. So I kind of learned when as a player, like you got to let guys play to their strengths and figure it out. So I've always kind of let the players play a little bit. But then you have to teach them how to manage the score, manage the clock, manage the situation. You got to teach them the game sense that goes along with that. But I've always encouraged the player, your role, again, just be as good of the player as you can be. Bring what you bring to the table every night, and we'll live with it, and we'll work around the rest of it.
Rick, Scott Arneal was in town with the Jets here in Dallas a little while ago, and he mentioned they've kind of been playing playoff games for a while just because they're kind of in a similar situation to you and a few other teams. Do you find that at this point now, this last home stretch, like you mentioned, you guys had that really, really good run. Now, is there anything left in terms of getting them to empty the tank and leave it all out there? How do you flex the same muscles that you kind of had them flexing for a while right after you got there, after going through a little bit of a lull? Is there more in the tank that they still have to give? And is it more about just convincing them that there's more when they might feel kind of depleted? How do you do that? How do you get them to do that in these last few games?
I think a couple of things. Like there's definitely more in the tank. And I think one of the biggest, most important jobs of a coach in our league is to manage the schedule. You've got to know when to practice them, when to travel, when to give them the days off, when to put them in the gym. That's a huge part of our job so that they're not burnt out. So we've managed the schedule very, very as close as we could. When do we travel? When do we give them the time to rest? And we all going through the same thing. We're all playing 16 games in March. We did. Now we're back into April. We ended up playing 17 because we had to play that game with LA that was canceled. But that's a big part of our job. The other thing that's going on, we've got some kids here who have never been in the playoffs. They don't know what it takes to get there. So my immediate message when we came back from the Olympic break was, all right, it's been hard. Every game from here on in gets harder, because the closer you get to the end of the year and everyone's fighting for a playoff spot, every game gets harder. They're still learning that. So it's not that they've emptied the tank. It's just that they're learning how to handle the pressure of what these games mean of going into the playoffs and how hard they actually become. And it gets harder. Tomorrow night will be harder than last night. And that's just the way it goes. So our young players are learning that. Because again, they've never been in the playoffs. Some of our veterans have, and they know how to handle it. The young guys don't. So that's my job as a coach, is to kind of groom them through it, help them through it. And when I see them having a tough, that's like I mentioned earlier, when you see them having a tough time, you grab them one-on-one and you just encourage them again to handle this a little bit better. But that all being said, when the puck drops and they're out on the ice and things are going 100 miles an hour, right? It's a lot easier said than done.
One of your leaders on your team, who obviously had some midseason success at the Olympics, is your defenseman Zach Werenski. And I'm curious, when Zach comes back from the Olympics and he has the success like that, and obviously he's had such a large role on your team, how do you use his, like, do you have to treat him with a different tank of energy? Like, you come out of that break, right? There's some guys who had some time off. Like, how did you treat, because Zach has continued to play really well from my viewpoint. So, like, how did you treat him so he's been able to kind of continue humming along like he has, or is that just a testament to the player?
It's a testament to the player first and foremost, but I let him decide. If you want to practice today, practice. If you want to practice for 10 minutes, practice for 10 minutes. He knows how he feels, especially at this time of the year when he's playing so much and he's played so much. I trust him. He's a good pro. He's a wonderful human being. I'd have to trust him and say, okay, I don't need to practice today. Fine. You don't need to practice today. I need to practice. I want to go by myself for 10 minutes, shoot some pucks. Fine, do that. I've given him the green light to do whatever he feels is necessary to play for the next game. Now, it's there's other guys, no, they need a little extra work. But in a situation with Zach, you've got to trust him. And he knows what he needs, knows what he doesn't need. He understands his importance to the team on both sides of the puck. There was a couple of games that I didn't see. He wasn't getting the puck enough. And that's his game, give him the puck, and he can control the game. So I sat down with him yesterday. We went over a couple of the games. It's okay. You need to move here to get the puck more. You need to do this to get the puck more. And last night he did those things. So he's a very coachable guy. But he's got the green light. One of the players has got the green light. You tell me what you need and you'll get it. He's earned that right. And again, I trust him 100%.
Rick, I read a lot of stories when you were first brought on by Columbus about your love for the game and all the respect that you have around this league. I'm curious now, after all of this grind that you guys have been through and right on the cusp of seeing how this season's gonna play out, hopefully just the regular season and then something beyond that, do you still love it? Do you still, even in a season like this where you don't have as much time to get to know everyone like you might, give them the phone call over the summer or go out to lunch or grab coffee, do you still find yourself loving the experience that you're having right now?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really do. Listen, this is who I am, right? It's not what I do, it's who I am. And first of all, let me tell you, my wife, Judy, she missed it more than I did. She couldn't wait to get that, right? Maybe it's because she's had a year and a half of me around all the time. But no, she misses the games. What I really miss the most, and just working with the players. I love the interaction with the players. That's what I love the most. So there's days you go in and you just, you might be a little tired, but then you see the players. Then you see, okay, you get the interaction, you talk to them, you're helping them. Man, I love that. And that's what I miss the most. So I love being behind the bench, the games and all that. Absolutely. But I really, really miss the interaction with the players. And I still have a good rapport with the players I've coached 15 years ago, right? So that's what I miss the most. And that's what brought me back. I had a call last year to come back. I said, no, wasn't interested. This year in October, Judy said, well, what are you going to do if someone calls this year? I said, well, it'd probably be, we're out a year. I don't think someone's going to call, but it'll depend on who it is and the team it is. But I've known Don Waddell for a long time. I've always loved coming to Columbus. It's a great city. It's always been a great atmosphere here. So when I said to Judy, I said, well, what do you think about going to Columbus, finish the year? Let's go. Like, she didn't even ask, where are we going to live? What are we going to do? How do we do that? She wasn't even interested in that. Let's go. So she missed it. I missed it. And we're absolutely thrilled to be back.
The reporter, and I give you full right to give me the no answer, but the reporter in me has to ask. So could you give me a hint, team, division of who called the year before? Are you willing to give me a?
No. Good try.
I owe it to myself to ask on that. Then secondly, the one thing that I got to give our credit, Stephen Meserve credit for wondering about this, and he put this in mind. I've always wanted to wonder, you've done this, and I'm sure it's evolved because I know you've told me the story. You were on the boat when Don called and you got that job. But what does the coach's interview typically look like? Like when you're getting interviewed for a job, what is the GM typically looking for? Is it more about, hey, we're going to play this way? Is it like, what is a GM, as someone who's had to sell yourself on the job, what does it typically look like to the employer when you're interviewing?
Well, I'm going to be embarrassed, but I've never interviewed for a job. I haven't. I've been approached. Would you be interested in coming Yeah, honestly, have I ever sat down with a GM one-on-one and had that discussion? No, I haven't. I mean, when I got into coaching, I was a Tuesday, I was a player. On Wednesday, I was an assistant coach. With the phone call was, well, do you want to retire and come up here and coach? That was the interview. I said, yeah, okay, I'll be there tomorrow, right? And I've been fortunate. There's been other jobs that, we're interested in you. Are you interested in this? Yeah, okay. And we got it done. So have I ever had an in-depth?
I think that's not
maybe another GM called him.
Yes, maybe another GM called him. We'll work on getting him back on here. But that's that's a Buffalo.
I guess the real answer to your question,
Yes.
Sean, is he was unknowingly interviewing for those jobs while he was coaching before and working at other places. That was
correct.
His
correct.
work past.
As Stephen Stephen to Stephen Meserve, who gave us the idea for that question. Obviously, it is we will continue to push on that, and hopefully we'll get Rick back on here. Oh, I think we're getting it back in right now. So here we go, and we're back.
I lost you. I'm sorry. Cut out.
No worries. We were just laughing about what it must be like to have the track record to where you don't necessarily have to grind through the 10 candidate interview process. That speaks to something.
I'm not smart enough to answer a lot of the tough questions, so I can consider myself lucky. Oh, good, I didn't have to do that.
Well, I only had one more. Sean might have a couple more, but I only had one more. And for me, my last one is actually something I was talking to a couple of us were talking to Glenn Golitzson about today, was a player named Jamie Benn. Because we were talking to Ryan Huska the other day, who coached Benn in Kelowna in juniors. And he said that even back in juniors, Jamie Benn was kind of a throwback player even then. So I'm curious, as someone who certainly has seen a fair amount of players in your career, would you describe Jamie Benn similarly as a throwback player, and how does he compare to other players in the league? Are there any other players in the league really like him?
Not very many like James. I love James. He is old school, man. Right? No shield, but I'm telling you, tremendous captain. He will do anything for the team. He will do anything for his teammates. I've seen him fight his best friends in the league. He'll go after them if he thinks they've taken a liberty on one of his players. When the puck drops, he's ready to go. Every shift, every game, works his butt off in practice. Like, just a tremendous human being, a tremendous captain. I absolutely loved my time with Jamie. Still do. And Sean, you remember when we lost in the bubble in Edmonton, man, he was so devastated when we lost in Game 6. He sat in his equipment for 2 hours. He couldn't eat, he was that saddened that we lost in the Stanley Cup Finals. But his heart and soul is into every day for the Dallas Stars and his teammates. You couldn't ask for a better human being, better captain. He's old school as they come. But man, oh man, you want him on your side every game. You just have to love being around the guy. His attitude is infectious. He's quiet, but he just comes to play, and it rubs off on everybody.
Is it, Rick, is there something when you look at players and a leader like that, and obviously Jamie is someone who is a little bit more quiet publicly, right? But he does a lot of his speaking behind closed doors and does it with his play. Is there something that you've noticed with teams when it comes to kind of having like a second in command that can also be a little bit more of the talker? Like, is that something that comes into play, like when it comes into kind of just building a great leadership group like around him too?
Only if the talker backs up what he says on the ice. That's all. You can all go in there and say all the best things and all the right things and the right tone and everything. If you don't go back on the ice and do those exact same things, your respect as a leader goes way down. The best leaders that I've been around, they're quiet and they go out and they just play the game the right way. They play the game as hard as they can. It's like, jump on my back, we're going to play. And they don't say that, they just show it. And those are the best leaders in this league. Those are the best leaders I've been around. I've been around vocal guys who really never did back it up. So again, the teammates see that. I've been around vocal guys that go on the ice and back it up. And they have the utmost respect of the players. But the worst thing you can do as a leader is talk about a game and don't back it up. Guys like Jamie, they don't say too much. And if anything said, he's going on the ice to back it up. So the leadership depends on how hard you play the game, you play the game the right way, and it's sending a message to your teammates: jump on my back, we're going here.
I'll let you close out with this Columbus team that you're coaching right here, and you've talked about some young guys that are learning on the way, and there's a lot of things we talked about Zach before. You got a captain there in Boone Jenner, who Boone feels like a little bit of a throwback to me, in many ways as well. When you kind of see guys now and kind of jumping into that in that 20, 22, 23, 24 age now, what's it like for you to kind of watch some of the guys in Columbus that are going to be the leaders for this franchise long term?
Well, I've enjoyed that. I really have. That's what I keep telling them. I'm here to help you grow as a human being. I'm here to help you grow as a player on the ice. And there's trials and tribulations with both. But they know I have their best interests at heart, both on and off the ice. And you've got to build that trust with your players, and something I've always taken great pride in. They know I care about them as a human being, and they know when I push them, I'm only pushing them for their benefit. And I've told a couple guys, I talked to Robertson a while ago. I said, I know I was hard on you. Yeah, but thanks, Bones. So they'll get it down the road. But some guys can handle that. And you got to know who you can push hard. We've got a guy in this team, Adam Fantilli, man. He's a wonderful guy. He's going to be a great player. I can push him, and I know I can push him. And I always send him a text. I'm challenging you here, all right? Yeah, and I love it. So that's what I like about it. Some guys you can't do that because they can't handle it. You got to take a much softer approach, a more direct approach, but you got to help them along. And you've got to know who you can challenge right out front and who you can't. And but that's what I love about coaching, dealing with all the different guys. But these young guys have a lot of talent. They've got a lot to learn, but they're going to get there.
Well, Rick, I just want to say thanks for your time today. There's nothing better than talking hockey, and there's nothing better than talking hockey with someone who has poured as much of himself into it as you have. So thanks very much for the time and for sharing with us, and good luck to you guys down the stretch.
Great talking with you guys. Enjoyed the time. Enjoy.
Yeah, Rick, and I got to tell people, I'm so appreciative of. I texted you last week about potentially coming on, and you said we're going to make it happen. And then yesterday, when I talked to you after morning skate, you said, "Well, let's do it." So I very, very, very much appreciate the energy coming to bringing this with us, and in the middle of two very big games for the Blue Jackets. So thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Good seeing you guys. Take care.
Thanks a lot, Bones. Well, our booking, Robert, I'm going to give kudos to our booking agency. I think we've done a pretty good job so far through two shows of making sure we have delivered on the booking. And
so far the top four people on the show are all the guests so far. We don't even make the top four ourselves of our own show.
Yes. We hopefully by episode 4 or 5, we will be out of the top 10 for people who have been on the show.
That's true. Making ourselves more obsolete with each passing show.
Yeah. But Robert, this was really fun. Not to go too long, just to close this all out, but really fun. Again, this is an evolving, growing project, really exciting for both of us. People saw firsthand today how that might work from time to time. There might be times Robert or I are at the rink, and maybe that means someone pulling solo duty and letting the guest look smarter than the person who walked away, as Jack did today while I was gone. So this has been really fun, really appreciated it. And if you're watching live, thank you so much. I think we've had 14, 15 people, at least the numbers I can see, watch live. I know this will be up on YouTube, the full video later, on all the podcast platforms. So really appreciate anyone who listened to this. And I mean, honestly, the amount of people who listened and watched.
I think Sean's been overcome with emotion because he's dropped off for a moment here. So we'll see if we can get him back for kind of the send off here. You hear, Sean? There you go. Catch up. Try again.
Production.
There we go. Thank you. My suspicion is it's a Wi-Fi thing at the rink where Sean is, and it's causing him to get a little choppy. So we'll see if we can get him back online really quick for send off here. But I'll just echo what he's saying, that while we're definitely still evolving this whole project and kind of you're seeing that it's not necessarily just one specific thing that we're trying to do every week. We love talking to people like Jack Hahn, love talking to people like Rick Bowness. I would argue that by listening to both of those chats today, both with Jack and with Bones just now, you can actually see a lot of overlap in the similar way that we were talking about with things like analytics or charts and video. There is a really happy marriage there, and it's really cool to see it in action. And I don't know if there's two better people you could ask for than someone who's been coaching for, I think, in like 5 different decades, if memory serves, in Rick Bowness, and someone like Jack Hahn, who's also been an NHL coach and knows very much what he's talking about as well. And both of them, I think you can also hear very clearly here and see their big hearts for the game and the players playing it. We're very grateful for both of them who've been on here. Thanks to everyone who's been watching and listening and who will listen later. Thanks especially to the smoke alarm attached to the truck backing up during some of the segments from the rink by Sean. I love the hockey ambience, so I'll always take that. But if you got some of that little bonus, then congratulations to you. Thanks to everyone today, and we'll see y'all next week on Algorithmically Incorrect Hockey. Cheers.